Change
Okay.
it. There it is.
We got it.
I got notice of Lem drops YouTube.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, we are in the house.
all right, we are back. Checking this stuff
Yes.
out. Anything?
Back in the lab. I see you.
Okay, we were just on a few minutes ago, if anybody's joining us now, and we are in the lab kicking some eCam and Restream tires tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had a flat a minute ago.
So good.
Yes, but we are in here now.
Okay, I am good on my YouTube. I mean, on my Facebook.
Yes.
Likewise, I see it.
Same here.
Okay, so I don't know. That was either Facebook or Restream. That because I didn't do anything different. I did the exact same thing.
But you did, however, go directly live without clicking on the. I'm not sure if that did anything, but I'm gonna say hello to us. Hello.
Observant Lee, what was it? He wants to know what it was. Well, you're right there next to me, man. I don't know what it was either. All we know is that it was. So Lem is typing on Facebook. Okay, let's go to this other. Where's the comments page? Is that this one? Yeah, that's this one here. Here
Okay,
we go.
cool.
And so
Let's go to the home
as
screen.
people type, we'll start to see those comments and stuff there in
Cool.
There you go.
Awesome.
So, yeah, there we go. Hey, there's Janine Lanier Walker from Georgia.
Yes.
To
Yes.
see-
Meet us.
Hey,
Greet us when you
Janine, her mom used to be my secretary when I was in Tampa.
Really?
Awesome. Mother and daughter duo there. Janine was my Sabbath school superintendent.
Wow.
And I think, Janine, your mom had a birthday. Was it yesterday or today? I have to call her. Yes.
Cool.
Lem is going to sing happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday to you. Better
Come
off
on, Lem.
with me not singing too long.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a song. I'll sing happy birthday.
Okay.
Come on now. Hold on.
I have to clear
Here
my
we go.
throat. Oh, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. May Jesus be near for the rest of your years. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you for today and the rest of your life. One more time.
Hey, hey.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. May Jesus be near for the rest of your years. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you for today and the rest of your life. There you go.
Yes.
Janine, you got to tell your mama, you can play that back for her if she's not watching tonight, that Pastor Paul had Bishop Donald Oliver sing her happy birthday.
That's right.
She knows better than to ask me to sing.
That's why we're here. We got your back.
Well, you know, every
Brethren.
time I hear you speak, Pastor Anslem, I am expanding. My mind expands on the capacity or the history or the legacy that you are currently upholding and walking in. Every time I hear you speak, you're talking about school superintendent. These are the folks. How expansive is your ministry history? Can you share a little bit about yourself and your
Sure.
role in your assembly, and the things that you actually are doing currently, and
Sure.
your
Sure.
influence and sphere of reach.
Yeah, that'll take me about 5 seconds. So,
I know.
so I started pastoring almost 25 years ago,
Mm,
and was pastoring for the most part in Florida and in the Seventh Day Adventist Church.
mhm,
Pastors they move from time to time. Um, in some ways that's a good thing. In other ways it's not, and then sometimes it's nuance. It has to do with the the time period and all of that. But so I started in North Central Florida, up around Gainesville area. Had two little tiny churches out in the country. Um, the first church had like 13 members. Um, the other church was, I don't know, about 40, 50 members or so.
mhm.
Um, so look at Janine saying, yes, share Pastor Paul, best church to know the Sassa. T Sassa is what we called it. But then from there, and I was what 24, I think 24 years old when I started there. And in
Yeah.
our church, they actually, the good thing about, well, it could be the good thing. Some say it's a bad thing. But no matter what size church you pastor, everybody makes the same. All the pastors make the same amount of money.
Mhm,
Um, so that helps smaller churches be able to have their own pastor, as opposed to that can be a benefit. But from there, from there, I left there. I went back to seminary, spent some time in seminary doing the youth ministry, in the youth ministry program. Then I came back to, where did I land after that? Um, Avon Park. Avon
mm.
Park, Florida. So I was in Avon Park with a little church there as an associate for a couple of years. And then I was sent up to South Georgia. So I was in Brunswick and Waycross, Georgia. I don't know, Bishop, you know where that is?
No,
Okay, well, everybody knows
I've only
Brunswick
heard
now
of
because of,
Waycross.
well, Brunswick was where the whole Ahmaud Arbery
Aha.
story took place, just about an hour south of Savannah.
Mhm,
So I was pastoring there for about 4.5 years. From there, I went to Tampa, and that's where I met Janine. I was pastoring a collegiate church and a smaller family church.
mhm,
Collegiate church was very unique among a lot of churches in that it was a church that started on the campus of the University of South Florida. And by the time I got there, it was, you could have anywhere between 200 to 400 people in worship on Sabbath, and the majority of them were 30 and under.
mm.
That's
And when
amazing.
I first got there, I think I was one of them. but
Okay.
and then the other church was the Notice Assa. So I've always had had more than one church. Um, um, we had fun there. Had a wonderful growth spurt in as far as the churches while we were there in Tampa, and then I got a call. They said they were moving me to South Florida, so I went to Delray Beach. Was there for a little while. It was the first time I pastored a church with a school. I had a K-8 school as well as a daycare. Um, and then I actually had two other little churches in addition to the mother church there. That church on its books had about 700 or so members. And
Mm.
you guys know what we say when we say on the books.
Yes,
On
sir.
the books.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's not necessarily
Hmm.
people in the
That's
pews.
in the
That's
pews. It's
that's
just on the books.
names on the books. We could have around 300 to 400 people in the building, but on the books it said the membership was
Hmm.
700 something. And then from there was sent to where I am now, which is in South Florida here in Fort Lauderdale, just up the road from where I was in Delray Beach, and I've been there for the last 4.5 years. So again, I have the congregation there as well as a school again this time. So we have a K-8 and again a early childhood learning center there at New Hope.
Mhm.
I also have the opportunity or privilege, rather, of sitting on the Broward County Sheriff's um, Social Justice Task Force. That's a very lively and interesting group that the sheriff started down here and filled out with some key people in the community. So I have no clue how I ended up on that committee with that. Um, but yeah, so that's been pretty much my journey. Um, Cliff
Wow.
notes.
That's a great journey, great history, a lot of good legacy. And as Lim was saying, you're building on legacy because you're not the first generation preacher
That's right. That's right.
or pastor.
I am a PK. I am the one
Yeah.
of the infamous pastor's kids. My father was a pastor. Grew up in a pastor's home. Most pastors' kids that I know, anyway, know that the last thing that you ever want to do and ever want to be is a pastor.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
um, you see all of the stuff and the mess and whatever that your parents go through, and
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And
Hmm.
that was me, actually. I had no interest in doing ministry and pastor. No, that's not true. I had an interest in doing ministry. I had
Hmm.
no interest in doing pastoral ministry.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and just the Lord just opened doors and things just kind of fell out. And I was one of those guys who kind of grudgingly ended up doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But when you get to see um, the impact that you can have or that the word has and God has on people's lives, there are times where you just kind of sit back and grin and say, wow, and I'm getting paid for this. I would do
Hmm.
this for fun.
Hmm.
And then there's other
Hmm.
days where it's like, every Monday you want to quit. but but so
It's like,
there's a
am I
balance.
getting paid for this? No, not enough.
There's
That's
a
a different.
balance.
Am I getting? I'm getting paid for this. That's a
I'm not
different
getting
type of
paid enough
question.
for this. So, but for me personally, I tend to hang out more in the wow, I'm getting paid for this because
Hmm.
there's um yeah, there's no gratification like seeing the light go off in somebody's head or
Hmm. Hmm.
somebody coming back. And now people will lie to you. You guys, you're at the back of the church and in the
Hmm.
end of church, Pastor, that was a wonderful message. Thank you so much. And then you're lying. I saw you sleeping the whole time. Talking about, uh,
Osmosis. They were picking it up through osmosis.
but every now and then you recognize that somebody really was touched and that there
Hmm.
has been some transformation, and that's huge. There's nothing that I've experienced that is more fulfilling than that. So
Hmm.
it's a powerful thing that we have been called to, and
Hmm. Hmm.
it's an extraordinary journey.
I'd like to
Wow.
know, Bishop Oliver, how you became a pastor, and then how you got your bishop rank, if that's how they call
Hmm.
it,
Bishop
and
Rick. Yes.
in between, yeah, like bishop rate. I don't know, or
Well,
Bishop Rich.
what what I
bishop
like to
rate.
first
There it
say
is.
pertaining to the bishopric is first that it really means a greater capacity of serving. There are some that look at it as a title of entitlement and not really understand that it's really a responsibility
Hmm.
of serving in a larger capacity. My growing and nurturing in the faith really started at about the age of 2. Although I wasn't a
Wow.
PK, here in Orangeburg, at the same church rather that I've come to pastor, my grandparents were instrumental, by the grace of God, to bring me into this facility
Oh,
back in
wow.
1968 when it was completed. Small block church in a community that it was a lot of family members and people who were kind of building and coming together, who could share cups of sugar, slaughtered hogs, grain that they grew in their fields. So it was a very sharing community knitted by this Pentecostal holiness church at the end of a dirt road. So that's where it started for me, with my grandparents introducing me and bringing me to the Lord. It was further developed in New York by the age of 6 under the watch care of my mother in the faith, I'll say, Pastor Mary Louise Spann. Now, of course, I wasn't bright enough. I didn't know enough, at 6 or 7 years old, of some of the traditions that were in the South that would have excluded women from pastoring.
Mm.
But that's another conversation we can touch on down the road, because that has been a contentious situation to broker for some. But anyway, for about 17
And that's
years.
just not in your context. That's in mine as well. That's a big thing in my context. So yeah, we'll have that discussion.
That's for sure, for sure. But for 17 years, from the age of 6 until about 21, I grew under her tutelage. And I like to say that she mothered me and not smothered me. And there is a difference, because there have been some who were smothered, and they were seemingly castrated. In other words, they couldn't be a man's man growing up under a woman's tutelage. They had to be heavy-handedly dealt with and not allowed to be nurtured, groomed, and developed for ministry. What she did is she gave me a lot of the foundational things of prayer, of fasting, knowing how to utilize a concordance. I used to sit with her at her home in Starrett City, right? And while she was cooking macaroni for Sunday's dinner and other food that she would prepare, she would task me with, get the dictionary, get the Bible, get the concordance, and have all of these things open on the table. And she would tell me what to do. So I learned that. Secondly, is I learned about prayer by hanging around the altar with the senior saints, right? The mothers who we would have what they call shut-ins. Now, not too many people, I don't know, especially when I came down here and I talked about shut-ins, they were like, shut in where? But we would actually shut in the church on a Friday. So after our Friday evening service, we would stay there until Saturday morning, sometimes until Sunday, in prayer around the clock. So we didn't sleep. We actually prayed throughout the night into the day. We would praise and pray and so forth. So she taught me that, and taught me about fasting and the importance of serving. So that's where I learned to serve in ministry, and closely aligned to my pastor. As I grew, then I was also given responsibilities of teaching the Me Too's. There is a group of children in Sunday school called the Me Too's. They were included too. So the young children was my first responsibility. And then my Bible teacher, or my Sunday school teacher, gave me my first opportunity to teach or to minister in the church regarding the fruit of the Spirit. Each one had one of the fruit of the Spirit, and so we had to minister with that. So I learned even tents. My love for tents and outreach in the community was birthed there, because we had a lot on the corner of Amboy and Sutter. Familiar with Brownsville, Amboy and Sutter, is right next to a Jewish synagogue. The building was a Jewish synagogue. That's where the church is. And there was an empty lot. And every summer she would put up a large tent that could seat maybe 250, 300 people easily. And the community would come, because the organ and the drums and the preaching, and people would come around and gather, and lives would be transformed. So I learned service there. That's where I also came to know my current wife, my future wife. I knew her from age 6. And so we've got 34 years together now by the grace of the Lord. But it was there that I saw her, and we grew together in ministry. After we married in 87, we were transplanted to Pilgrim Church under the watch care of my father in the faith, the late Archbishop Roy Brown. And that's where I saw and experienced the walk of faith that will allow you to do ridiculous things. I mean, when I say ridiculous, I mean, he did things like in New York, who do you know that have rented a train, a full subway train for the congregation to go to Carnegie Hall?
Oh, come on.
Okay.
Now.
He's the only one in the history
crazy.
of Brooklyn, New York that I'm aware of that have done things like that. He, along with Apostle Huey Rogers and Bishop, the late Lyndon Penn, would go to Madison Square Garden with his father in the faith, F.D. Washington from the Church of God in Christ. He was one of the big men there in that jurisdiction. And they would do Jesus Love You soul saving crusades inside of Madison Square Garden. I mean, and fill the entire arena, which was awesome back in the 70s and the 80s where this was taking place. 27 years we served with Bishop Brown. And when I went to Pilgrim initially, I did not want to be close to anything dealing with ministry because I had experienced my own church hurt from where I was. And I says, okay, kind of dealt with that, but we're going to this new place. So I'm just going to blend in. You know, Pilgrim was pretty large. It was about 1,500 in attendance regularly. So you could kind of blend in and get lost. So I figured I'd sit in the back and I'd just chill. I didn't need to be involved in anything ministry wise. But I didn't know that there was a passion on the inside that would be pulled on. There was a need for a musician to play kettle drums. And I'm a musician. I play percussion. I'm a percussionist. I play most percussive instruments. Oh, wow. I'm not maybe the greatest keyboard player like Lem. I may not be the greatest drum player like Dave Weckl and, you know, Billy Cobham, which were people that I used to listen to. But like Alex Acuna, that's a name drop. You can go check it out. Percussionist. Really enjoyed it. And so they were doing a Christmas cantata in 89. And they say they needed someone to play the kettle drums. And I played in high school band and all of that kettle drums, orchestra drums. So from that, I heard a need about someone to help with the baptism, clean up the back area for the baptism. So I went and volunteer, always volunteer to serve. Because as a child, what I learned at St. Timothy, I used to hang out around the altar on Saturdays and clean the church for Sundays. And I remember I was about maybe 11, 12, and I prayed that the Lord would anoint my hands so that whatever needed to be done in his house, that I could do it. And I had given myself to that service. So every time there was a call of service, I would show up. I would volunteer. And I volunteered to go clean up in the back for the baptistry, the rooms that they would go and change in before they go to be baptized in the name of the Lord. I got there and was the only one that showed up. And I cleaned up everything. And while I was there, I remember at the time he was just Pastor Brown. He says, "Who is that young man? Where'd he come from?" And he thought that I was from the islands. They didn't know that I was from Charleston, South Carolina, and lived in New York. They thought I was from the islands because there was a mixture of the culture there at the church. From that day until the day I came to Orangeburg, South Carolina, and the day of his transition in 2019, I had the opportunity, my wife and I, to serve for 27 years. Very close to him, the Lord allowed me to be, as some would call, an adjutant, but I was actually a son in ministry who served. Yeah. And I would travel throughout the United States, into Africa, into different places where he would go and serve. Even times when he would say, "Son, I'm not going to minister, you minister." Or he may say, "Son, what do you hear about this particular?" He taught me again how to use and minister the word. I remember, and I'm going to get to Lim's question about the bishopric, because I remember in 2009, it was actually November of 2009, he was restructuring the organization known as Pilgrim Assemblies International. And we had a general secretary by the person of Bishop Charles Joseph Reed. He was my elder brother in the faith, and he had transitioned about 2 years before, 2007, 2006. And there was a vacancy in our organization for the general secretary. And in a meeting in the conference room, he says to me, "I'd like for you to be my general secretary." And I had followed Bishop Reed, not knowing that I was being groomed and being prepared to serve in the capacity where he had served. In the same meeting, he says, "I have a mind to make you a bishop," because he was consecrating about 6 or 7 in 2010. And then it went from 6 or 7 to 8 to 12. He consecrated 12 men into the episcopacy July 10th of 2010. And I was one of those men, somewhat reluctantly, because I figured, well, one, I didn't pastor a church. I wasn't a pastor of a church. It was unthinkable. He's one that served the bishop. He's one that served in the assemblies. Now, one of the saving graces is that he had allowed me and sent me on assignments to serve under other pastors. There was a senior man who was on his bed of affliction. He actually was in the hospital, and he had lost so much blood, they didn't even know how he was going to live. And I was assigned to go and serve with him for 6 months while he regained his strength. I also had the privilege of going back to the church of my nativity, St. Timothy. Mother Span had transitioned, and they needed a pastor. So I was assigned there to serve for over a year and a half, almost 2 years. So I was always sent on these assignments to come alongside pastors, assist, help, strengthen, encourage, help set order in the house, reestablish and train their ministers, their deacons, and different ones of how to serve in different capacities. One of the hardest decisions thing for me to accept was what Lem asked me about becoming a bishop in the Lord's church, because I had seen politics in the church and I didn't want to be another part of the political engine and how things were done and how they were doing. I was good enough with serving, coming alongside and assisting, but I didn't understand that that was another capacity to serve. That was going to open up capacity for me to serve in other arenas and other pastors, not just in the organization that I was a part of, but others, no matter where I went, because they would stop and recognize the gift, not so much the title, but the gift of coming alongside and serving with whomever it is who names the name of Christ. And I think that was one of the telling things, even in this community of ECAM, where we've, this is where I came to know Anslem, where I've come to know Lemuel. I remember the first time that Lem and I connected. I called him for his birthday. Do you remember? I called you on your birthday to just and sing a happy birthday song, the same song that I sang this evening. Okay?
Good,
but
good,
what I'm
good.
saying is that
Yes.
there's a
He's our
different
resident
path.
happy birthday singer.
There you go. There you go. But it's a different pathway that's used. And not everyone comes to, some people think that they deserve to be a pastor. Some think that they're entitled to the right to lead people. But it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a great responsibility. So those who, they envy and they want to wear a ring, they want to have a certain position, a title, and be recognized by people, there's a whole lot more that go with it behind the scenes. I didn't mean to take the long way around, but there's a lot of stuff to unpack in that that we could probably talk about over the next few weeks or months. But that's my journey. My wife and I had come through and constantly serving. even here in Orangeburg. It's not because we have the largest church. I remember we were in a meeting, and I'll digress after this. We were in a meeting with our county administrator, and some people don't know that again, the church size is a block church, 50 by maybe 60. It's not a large block building. And we don't have a large congregation. I didn't come here with a whole congregation in place. Like Anselm, sometimes you have more names on paper than, people in pews. And we came to an organization or to a church or community where there were mostly seniors. When I accepted to carry the ministry forward in 2012, the seniors that once lived, they began to fall asleep one by one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my wife and I were left with rebuilding a ministry with virtually no one. So we did something different. We didn't wait for people to come into the building. We went outside the building into the community to where the people were. We began showing up. Come on, I hear you. I feel it. We began to show up at county meetings, council meetings, going out into the community where the people were to make the impact. And I remember our administrator said something, because when we came in, we got billboards. We did things like this, cards like this,
Nice.
where
Yep.
where people were like, who is that? And he said in this meeting, he says, if you didn't know where he was located and the part of town that they are located in, you would think they were a large mega church, because we had been exposed to that through Bishop Brown and Pastor Span. So it prepared us that wherever we went, we represented the kingdom in that way. So, Lem, that's just a long way around to talk about how I got to this place that I didn't ask for, that others might have said he wasn't qualified to be in. But my father in the faith saw something of God in me that says, you need to be here and serve from this place going forward. And so that's our short, long story.
Well, I can't even begin. I don't even have the kind of memory that allows me to share that length. I wish I was listening to you and I was like, how is he remembering all of this stuff? I'm just blown away by your memory. That's just amazing.
Well, look, Lem,
well, I guess I have
hear
to.
your story, man. How
Yes,
I
did
come
you
guess
end
on.
up where you are?
I'll have to share mine. But in reality, I'm a PK, and like I always tell other PKs who become pastors, we're just glutton for punishment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and actually, my parents are actually in history books. They are some of the native pioneers of the Jesus Name movement in the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
Back in the 70s, which seems to be it, just from hearing you guys, as well as hearing around, the 70s seems to be kind of like some type of revival, like a church
I've heard
revival
of the
of
70s
some
before.
way. There's a
Yes.
lot of movements and a lot of organizations established in the
Mm-hmm.
70s, early 70s. So anyway, I come from that pedigree, and I pastor here in New York City, and kind of cut my teeth preaching and teaching in the streets of New York,
Mm-hmm.
in just having that kind of history. But I started pastoring when I was 22, and my parents just pretty much handed me the church, and now 25 years later, I'm here. So we're neck and neck, Pastor
Mm-hmm.
Anselm, when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
our the insanity of of being a
Crazy.
pastor for so long. Um, but like you said, you know what? It is a hard work as much as it is hard work,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
last year there was some challenges that I faced, and really wanted to even, not last year, the year before, or maybe even, well, I shouldn't say, maybe 3 years. Um, though it kind of leveled up in the late 2020, and I was ready. I was ready to kind of not call it quits, but take a sabbatical. Having been in position, I haven't pastored a church. I think the most we've grown was maybe 150, and that's people showing up. You know,
Right.
although it seems like Staten Island, a lot of people call me their pastor, but but
Mm-hmm.
you know how that goes. Um, so that's just the challenges of really growing. I'm not part of an organization, much like, unlike you guys that have some, like support systems or a connection to outside church groups.
Used
Um,
to.
I'm Yeah, I'm pretty much independent
Mhm.
in pastoring here. I try to connect with the churches here in Staten Island, but uh, it's fragmented here also.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why I enjoy being with you guys, even this second week,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
being with men. And also, I understand the differences that we may have. I don't know the depth of it, but, um, we could choose to really argue, and choose to
I'm sure
pick
we will at
apart.
some point.
Yeah, what we could choose to do that, but I think the beautiful thing, I think Observant Lee asked, where our faith tradition lies, and there are many things that we could probably really, draw straws from. But the fact of the matter is, that we are anchoring our friendship and
Mm-hmm.
our connection in, who Jesus is and our faith in
Mm-hmm.
Him, and the fact that
Yeah.
He is salvation. So, and it's a beautiful thing to see men
Yeah.
of different history, of different uh, journey to where we're at now, come together and be part of it. I was telling the brothers here, for those of you that are watching, I was telling them, that here in New York City, or anywhere else that I'm at, every time I say I'm a pastor of a church, they always say to me, "Oh, are you pastor of a Filipino church over there?" And it
Mm-hmm.
seems like it seems like in some people's minds, the only people I could pastor are Filipinos, But
Mm-hmm.
we pastor a very multicultural church,
That's all right.
here in New York City, and my family, my sister, and a fellow brother in the Lord who's a minister in our church are the two Filipinos in my congregation. Everybody else is either
Wow.
Hispanic, black, white, yeah, Nigerian,
Oh, nice.
all types of people. It's an incredible feeling to kind of enter into a place expecting
Yeah.
something and receiving something totally different than what
Mm-hmm.
you had in your mind about a certain type of people or certain types of things. There's a you guys know this, and this is not any news to anybody that's listening to us. That there are a lot of churches that are homogenous. They're one type of people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, to me, I like, if your community is homogeneous. If there is only one type of people in your community, I can see that. But if your community is multi-ethnic and multicultural,
Mm-hmm.
and and somehow there's no barriers of communication, as in different languages, I can understand if it's Spanish, et cetera, et cetera. But there's no barriers to communication,
Mm-hmm.
and you serve only one type of people, um, and your environment is not a type of people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to challenge. I want to
Yeah.
challenge you to begin to look and see why are other people, the groups of people, are not in our community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the big conversations that I think is worth having as well. And I think a lot of times people may look at a church that has a lot of different ethnicities and will default to saying, "Oh, there's a multicultural church," um, and yet I think that that's a challenge in North American Christianity, um, and I think there are places where we think we have multicultural churches when what we really have is just multi-ethnic churches because they are not the same thing. So you have a
Explain that a
multi-ethnic.
little bit,
Okay,
Pastor.
so
I'd
so
love
in
to
a
hear your thought on
multi-ethnic
that.
church, multi-ethnicities, you've got lots of different ethnicities, um, but those kids in that church, they go to the same school, they listen to the same music, they eat at the same fast food restaurants, they wear the same clothes, they're in the same culture. No matter
Ah,
what
yes.
their ethnicity is, their culture is the same. Their worldview is pretty much the same. That's
I got
not
you.
the same thing as having a multicultural environment where somebody believes that their worldview says that worship or reverence, rather, let's say reverence
Reverence.
means this in the sanctuary, where
Mhm.
somebody else's culture says, no, this is what reverence is. It's a
Mhm.
much tougher thing to merge cultures together in a
Culturally.
worship
Mhm.
setting than it is just to merge ethnicities together, because
Mhm.
culture has such a huge impact on people's understanding of how Christianity is practiced or whatever religion that you
Mhm.
are.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that's one of the reasons why, still Sundays or in our case, weekends are still some of the most segregated places in the nation, is because we look at religion, we understand religion through cultural lenses. I'm not saying
Mhm.
it's a good thing or it's a right thing. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing either. I'm just saying
Mhm.
that it's a thing, and it's probably does a lot to explain why we see, because you go to some black churches, and the expressive nature of worship, um, somebody in a different culture may say, "Oh, that's very irreverent." Um,
Mhm.
but that black congregation, they feel that that worship is an expression of their blackness, of their culture,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and that if you criticize the way that I do this, there are people who will read that as, you're not just criticizing my theology of worship, you're criticizing the color of my skin. They're not going to
Mhm.
necessarily say it like that, but when
Mhm.
it gets bare bones, that's exactly what they're saying. You're criticizing my culture. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that too often, though, we have allowed those things to become barriers, Lem, to what you were just making a call for. Um,
Mhm.
To, I think, if I can, if I may, one of the things that I foster in our church, in our congregation, is actually the beauty of diversity. So, I mean, we're in New York City, right? So interesting, because when about 20 years old, before I took the pastorate, or maybe I was already pastoring, but I had a vision while I was praying. And in my vision, I saw a man. I didn't know his face or everything like that, but I saw a man with a bamboo hat. You know, those big, you're pretty much stereotypical Asian hats with a bamboo stick carrying two buckets. And one bucket had full of water, and the other bucket had one seed. And both of them weighed equal
Mhm.
almost. And I had no idea what that was. I was assuming that man, or that person carrying those buckets was me. I'm the Asian guy, right? But I didn't understand what was happening when it comes to the two buckets. Then I was reading the book of Numbers, and I'm looking, and looking to see, because sometimes I forget exactly where it is. Yeah, in Numbers 24, I was reading this, and he said, verse 4, he had said, this is Balaam, Balak, and so forth and so on. He had said, which heard the words of God, which saw the vision of the Almighty falling into trance, but having his eyes open. How goodly are the tents, O Jacob, and the tabernacles of Israel. As the valleys are, they spread forth as gardens by the riverside, as the trees of line aloes, which the Lord had planted, and as cedar trees beside the waters. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. Now, I had this vision without me, um, without this reference here until a few months later, I see this. And I was sharing this with somebody in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling the vision and how God speaks to us. And then it occurred to me, I said, New York City, waters have got to be, that's the name of our church, by the way, but waters have got to be um, different types of people, and the seed
Mhm,
has got to be the word of God. So
mhm,
the word was going to be in different types of people. And here I am in New York City. I mean, you turn left and right, there are different types of people. I mean, this is the mission field over here. You guys know if you've been to New York. I know Bishop Oliver grew up here.
mhm, mhm,
So he knows you come out of New York and you go to a deli, and there's one speaking Spanish, the other speaking Albanian, the other speaking Russian, and they're all making
mhm,
sense in their little own corner. But we're all wondering what in the world. I hope they're not talking about us, right?
mhm.
Because everybody's different. So one of the things that I challenge our church is to actually celebrate the cultures that are in our
Yeah.
church. And the
Mhm,
fact of the matter is, that there are different cultures in the people that they come, and they will come dressed in Nigerian garb.
Hmm.
There will be people coming from off the streets of New York, just jeans and what have you, and there will be other folks that are actually wearing their cultural garments in the church building when we gather together, as well as different philosophies and different political standings, especially with this COVID situation and our masking, unmasking, so forth and so on, and navigating all those different viewpoints and different subsets of people is a challenge that I have, obviously, and we have as a team, as our leadership there, because we don't want to have a one type of accepted
Yeah.
understanding of the world. We are not forcing people to think in a bubble or think in a box as I would. I mean, I grew up in a holiness Pentecostal church experience,
Hmm.
and when you think about holiness and things of that nature, you're talking about skirt, long hair, no jewelry, all of those different things. But I've
mhm,
come to a place now where I delight in that. I want my wife. My wife continues to follow our upbringing, because she grew up with my ministry when I had that preaching. But now everybody's pretty much decent, but they come as they are in their knowledge of within their culture. And when we have our potlucks,
mhm,
we
Potlucks
I
are gonna be
make
awesome.
sure, I make sure,
mhm,
I make sure I tell them, everybody, please bring your own stuff, bring your
mhm,
own culture, represent your culture here,
mhm.
because our diversity is the strength of this church. The
Right.
fact of the matter is that when you come in here and you see a Filipino guy leading this church, and you look around and there's hardly any people there, and it's not conducted in a Filipino way, and there's no allegiances to a culture, there's no allegiances to a way or a method of worship, there's no allegiances to a method of appearances, that we begin to develop a church culture. And that
Mhm,
church culture is about the worship of Jesus in how you express it within the confines of personal worship. And so, we have people, we've had especially when the Black Lives Matter movement came along. We actually did not kind of force people to get on one side. We are,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
definitely, I definitely spoke about justice and injustice. Uh, definitely spoke about the fact that we're standing up for people that are oppressed and of that nature, but there were people that had different thoughts, different sides of the issue. And
Hmm.
the challenge of having people understand justice, that we're not talking about black or white as it is in our society at that present time. It's talking about disenfranchised people experiencing injustice, and we are God's people to call for justice. You know what I'm saying? So it was not, I had a challenge of having to front it in such a way that it's beyond the color that we are fighting for. It is the people that feel injustice, and we should lean to the people that feel oppressed and that feel the weight of systems against them. That
Hmm.
that racism is against God, not because I'm a minority, but because God delights in justice. And if there's people that are facing and meeting injustices, we should champion their cause. We should celebrate with them and run with them and come and walk with them,
Yeah.
because God has called us for justice. So, um, you know, that's always been kind of like my push because of what we represent here in New York City, the different cultures. We want to celebrate the cultural differences
Yeah.
beyond ethnic differences, and have everybody come and be part of what God has called us, and really try to come in together into the culture of the church, the
Mm.
culture of the
Mm.
church, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, Lem, to see you being successful to that, particularly in today's climate. I mean, today's socio-political climate here in the United States
Well, I don't
is
know how
becoming
successful I am, but
well.
but
You're
that's what we
doing it.
try.
The fact that you're doing it, and that you have people there from all of those different backgrounds, when our climate right now in the United States is so polarized,
Hmm.
politically, religiously,
Hmm.
social issues, all of those things. People are just so more inclined and intentional and intense in retreating into their tribes.
Well,
Hmm.
Um,
that's that right there.
Hmm.
The word that you use there, Pastor, intentional,
Hmm.
is really my go-to.
sure.
We
Yeah.
have to be intentional in celebrating our differences, and it's funny because I fostered a conversation after Ahmaud Arbery. I fostered a conversation of black brothers and white brothers and in between brothers to have the conversations that the nation was having, and it's
Yeah.
on my YouTube page here if you want to see it, at Lem Drops. But I tell people, you've got to see that we're different. You've got to see that you and I look different.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, when you see that we are different, then you must champion our unity. Look at us that we are different and understand it's not because we're the same that we're strong. It is because we're different, and our differences are not preventing us from coming together.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
our
Yeah.
strength.
Hmm.
That's
That's our
Hmm.
huge.
strength.
That's
Not
huge.
that we're the
Yes.
same, not
Yeah.
that we're the
Hmm.
same. It's that I
Hmm.
could see you're black. I could see you're white.
Hmm.
I could see you're
Hmm.
brown. I could
Yeah.
see your
You're not
your
colorblind,
heritages. I could see. I'm
Right.
not
but colors are
colorblind. In
beautiful.
fact,
Yeah.
Hmm.
in fact,
Yeah.
in fact, um, it is the lack of color blindness that enables me to feel the pain
Come
of
on
others.
now.
It is
Come
the
on
lack
now.
Hmm.
of my shades blindness
Yeah.
that allows me to say, hey, these particular people feel a certain way, and they should and have the right to feel that way.
Yeah.
And if it now aligns with the justice of God, then we run to their cause, not because of their color, but because God's call for us to fight and stand for justice of
Hmm.
those of our brethren who are feeling the weight of injustice on them. It was a difficult way to navigate, but I had to stay in the word because the cultures were different, but the word of
Hmm.
God is the
Is
same.
what unifies us. That's what unifies us, right?
Yeah.
And that sometimes is the point of departure. There are those, like Anselm say, who retreat. And if the leaders retreat into their silos, to their particular tribes of theology or idiocracy, that's going to also splinter and fracture their body,
Yeah.
because they're not staying with the word or true to the word. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about in Acts, right? Where you had the believers, the new converts who had come to believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. And then you had the Jews who had converted, right? And so in chapter 15, you have them go and say, well, listen, before you can really be a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, you got to come through our cultural thing of
Yeah.
circumcision, because you got to come this way. You can't just jump over our culture. No, you've got to come through this
Yeah.
means. Same thing today. There are those who says, no, you've got to come through our cultural barriers and fit all of these prerequisites before you can achieve that or warrant that or get that. When the word has made it very simple, that it's not about your cultural. It's there, but it's not about your culture. It's something higher than that, something
Yeah,
that's more unifying than that.
I think we do not celebrate our cultural differences because we feel that it may cause division in the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But culture, and to the point of what Pastor Anselm you mentioned about the difference between culture and ethnicity, and even though right now, maybe our young people kind of like are in the same culture, but we have Russians in the church. Um, we have all types of Hispanics in the church. We have Africans from Nigeria, the Ivory Coast. Um, we have Jamaicans in the church. We have Trinidadians in the church. All types of people, and in fact, uh, uh, not only do we fly their flag, we want them to fly their culture, according to holiness and things of that nature. But my to what you were saying, Bishop Oliver, I think I would love. Well, let me just say this: if a pastor, I would love to see this. If a pastor sees that his congregation lacks certain type of cultural differences, I would love him to say, "Hey, you know what? We don't have Filipinos come to this service." And not just the Filipinos, but I want to express to the community that we are more than those that gather here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to be intentional about bringing people that look different than them and
Mm-hmm.
sound different than them.
Mm-hmm.
There is a safety, a feeling of safety to bring other people that look like you, talk like you, feel like you, and share your thoughts. There's a sense
Mm-hmm.
of safety there, but the gospel is not safe.
Yeah.
It,
Mm-hmm.
it, it is very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
It should be very dangerous to the
Mm-hmm.
mindset of the culture out there. It should be jarring. It
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
should this web stream here, this live stream, should make people feel a sense of, hey, wait a minute,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world
Mm-hmm.
out there, society out there is telling us we're different, but these guys, even though they look all different, they're making sure they are different, but they are pushing for unification. And for me, because of this idea that people are colorblind, I think for me
Mm-hmm.
is to wake up and realize, you know what, I need to be open to the fact that if only white people come up to my pulpit because we're a white church, or only if a black man comes up to my church because we're a black church, or only an American comes to my pulpit because we're Americans, I need to shift the dynamic and let them know the gospel is being preached by
Mm-hmm.
different people through different means in different ways, but Jesus is the same.
Come on now.
There's in the
Wow.
comments a brother of mine who served in New York. He's now in Georgia. Pastor Michael Gittins. He served as pastor of a congregation in Queens that is primarily made up of Koreans, Asians. He's in there. And that's exactly, it's called New People Church right in New York. And
New
that's
People
what they
Church.
did. They celebrated their diversity, but they were unified in Christ. And he's black.
Wow.
He and
Hey,
his wife
listen,
as a
we're going to
team.
celebrate right quick. We're going to
Okay.
celebrate Pastor Felicia
Come
coming
on.
on.
Yay!
Get some diversity
Yay!
right here.
Yay!
Come on,
Yay!
sister.
Yay!
All right. All
it,
right. All
it,
right.
it,
I didn't want to take
and
away from that, but I wanted to acknowledge Felicia as she has come on. We are delighted to have you with us this evening, Felicia.
Yes.
amen.
Oh, we're not
Amen.
hearing you right now. She's going to get that.
She's going to work on that.
You know what, Pastor
But
Anslem, Pastor Oliver, I want to ask you guys this question because there's the idea of cultural appropriation,
Okay.
right? Because I often say to people where I go, I say, I feel like a black guy, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like a black preacher because I whoop and I am definitely not what people may think is a typical Asian guy. I am not. What's his name? What's his
Chan?
name? Chan. Yes, yes. I am not.
Still not yet, Felicia. Not hearing you yet.
Um, Francis Chan. I'm not
Yeah.
Francis
Francis
Chan,
Chan.
and
Hmm.
or anyone else that you may think. I had a Hispanic family who were originally from Brooklyn, moved to Florida, came back to Staten Island, and were looking for a church. We were pastoring in a storefront church, and they started coming. They later tell me that the mother was walking around the community and was standing outside on a Sunday morning hearing somebody preach. And she went back to the family and said, "Look, I think I found a good church for us. I think the pastor is black. We got to go to that church and see them." And my brother-in-law is Haitian. So he was the one leading the congregation at that point, and they thought he was the pastor. And then I come up, obviously, and then all they saw, oh wow, he's a short Filipino guy, right? So it there is, I mean, it's been there. Obviously, it's been active, but there is now a kind of awakenness to cultural appropriation, and a lot of people are kind of throwing that around. How, or is it something that we should concern ourselves in the church, or is there a cultural influence that is allowable and acceptable, or should I try to figure out what a Filipino should sound like instead of preaching like all the other preachers that I grew up listening to and loved and admire and honor, who happen to be black and who happen to be Pentecostals, and most Pentecostal preachers, um, are hoopers, right, as they would say, you know. Um, please.
I can see both me and Bishop are chomping at the bit on this one. Want to check just to make sure. Yeah, still, I want to see if we can work on Felicia's audio right quick because I'm still not.
Yeah.
No, still not hearing you.
No, we don't hear you yet.
I'm reading lips though. I saw it's blinking.
Yeah, for sure. She said she's going to go off and
Go
come
off
back
and come
on.
back
Okay.
on. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Uh-huh. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Um,
So
Lim.
hold on, Bishop. Let me right quick because
Okay.
I want to just some of the comments. I want to make sure
Yes.
folks know we're not ignoring them.
Yes.
I saw a question from Robert
Diana.
Guerrero. How are you guys getting? He's a little off topic, but how do you guys get Restream and Ecamm to sync so well? I
Mhm.
try with both of them and Zoom, and always have an amazing challenge, especially as it relates to sound. This looks and sounds great. Please help. It is 12:03. I want to let you go what you were going to say, Bishop.
Mhm, mhm.
Can we give ourselves a time that we'll come back and address that? Or do you want to
Yes.
do it now?
Can we do it now? Yeah, because
Okay.
it's
Want to do
fine.
it
We're
now?
going to come
Okay.
back to where we are. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Lem is probably the most articulate when it comes to, at least more so than me. Um,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
so, I'll give it my quick little shot. So, what we're doing is we've have all of our guests have come in through through the Ecamm
Mhm.
setup, but we are streaming, or I'm streaming from my Restream. So I set up an event in Restream. And once you set up an event in Restream and you do your final finish, once you've put in your time, then Restream gives you that last window and it says, here's a link that you can share if you want somebody to pair their stream with yours. And so I take that link and I send it to these guys, and they are streaming it to their channel. The other thing that we're doing, as you're seeing the Restream comments over on, I always do that wrong, on this side, is Restream has a chat client where you can, and with their chat client, you can embed into your Ecamm window through your widgets overlay. You can embed that code that you get, and then just shape it up and move it wherever you want. Basic,
Mhm.
you see, we can move this around, but this is one of the widget overlay, or the widget overlay inside of Ecamm, where you just put that code that the chat client gives you. Now, Lem can tell you all of that in 30 words or less and make it a lot clearer than I just.
30,
so
30
for those
words
of
or
you that
less.
for those of you that are not familiar, number one, Restream is an online platform
See,
that
boom.
allows for you to stream into multiple and different platforms that you may have. So if you have groups on Facebook, if you have a YouTube page or several YouTube pages, Restream allows you to stream into those areas. For those that are familiar with Ecamm, Ecamm is a native software that you actually download into your Mac only device, your Mac device, which allows for you to actually stream from your Mac into a destination. So YouTube or Facebook, it's only one. So Restream allows you to send your Ecamm feed into different platforms all at once. What we are doing here actually is Pastor Oliver, Bishop Oliver, myself, and Pastor Felicia here are actually coming in through an Ecamm, what do you call it?
Link, guest
Link.
link into interview.
No, we are using our virtual cameras
Got it.
Yes.
Hmm.
that
Hey, we've
is
got
now
audio
fed
now.
in to Pastor Anslem's Ecamm software through his interview mode. That interview mode allows us to be here. He has chosen to put us in panels, much like these boxes that you see. This is what he does, like an overlay. Then he sends this feed in through Restream, and then that Restream then brings us to where you are ever seeing this. And the other things that he has placed here is a widget from Restream, which is a chat widget, which you can see to our
Right.
left side, right side, whatever, you know.
Yeah. All
Anyway,
right.
that was not 30 words or less, but
I was thinking
But
that as you were speaking.
but one other key piece for Roberto is that he was also using Zoom, and
Right.
Zoom presents its own challenge to
yes,
integrate so that the persons, if you're doing one way, it's not an issue. But if you want to have your guests that are inside of Ecamm interview hear the people that are in Zoom and vice versa, you will need loopback, some way of patching that audio between.
The new beta.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll get to that. It
The new
got
beta
pulled, but
crashed, and I saw they had a
it got
crash
pulled. But I
that
wanted to
Ken said,
talk about
listen,
that tonight. But go ahead.
we're,
You may
we're, we're
not
going to come
need.
back to that.
Yeah,
We're going to
you
come
may
back to
not
that. We may
need
not
something like
may
loopback
not
going
need
forward, but
loopback, but loopback's got your back. until Ecam gets right back on
It's also
track.
got $99. Your
Yes,
$99.
yes, yes.
Yes, it is a
All right,
paid service. Restream as well as Ecamm is a paid service.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Sister Felicia, Pastor Felicia, blessings
Woo,
to you, our sister.
woo.
So good to have you.
I
Lessons,
love it.
gentlemen.
Finally, I get to
God,
look at a beautiful face. Goodness, these two guys.
I know, right? I
God
mean,
Oh,
bless you. Listen, I want to thank you guys for inviting me on, and I got to tell you, your conversation tonight is very very rewarding, particularly moving into the gates, and we're on the eve of Black History Month,
yeah, yeah,
hmm
and moving into the season of celebrating people from all nationalities and
hmm
backgrounds, ethnicities, and religions, and different things like that. And so
hmm
I just want to say that in tandem with your conversation that you all are having tonight, I believe that if we all remember that people is the most precious thing on this
yeah.
earth, and
hmm
that if we would all consider maximizing human potential,
Mm,
we
hmm
make everybody better.
yeah.
hmm
Wow, wow.
hmm
That's huge.
hmm
Yeah, I
hmm
to that point, I love that. I love that. The heart of Jesus's mission is people, right?
Yeah,
hmm
Um, the most, you know, the cross was about people. It was not. It was not forcing people through a cultural lens. I think as you came on, Pastor Felicia, my heart just leapt, right? Because you're such a sweet person. I love seeing you and your journey, your family. And one of the things that I have to always remind myself of the differences that we have as people and our understanding of the world. And for me, to really take my time to understand the differences or how other people may see the world. In doing so, I can then titrate or maybe allow my language to
Have a
reflect
cup.
some of the things that maybe are acceptable in other cultures
Thank you.
that I could force other people to say, hey, you shouldn't think that way. But that's not the case. You think that way. It's not against God to think that way. And therefore, instead of me attempting to change your way of thinking, I have to receive the way you think and work within those frames of mind. You know what I'm saying? So that
Yeah,
you're
I
saying the challenges of intentionality is the fact that I have to learn the nuances of people and understand that certain things are offensive and certain things are okay. And I have to know also that certain things are acceptable in levels of friendship, but maybe not acceptable in levels when you're just meeting somebody.
Mhm.
So I can make jokes, I can make light of things only in the capacity of our friendship and understanding. But if I am brand new to the situation, understand also that there are certain things just
right,
because they're okay in my circles doesn't mean I should enforce that
right,
okayness to other cultures and other spheres of community. If I'm
right.
making sense.
Yeah, you bring me to the concept and the thought. I am a graduate of the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, so I have an invested interest in this kind of conversation.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things with regard to what you just said, Pastor Lim, is the subject of cultural competencies.
Mm,
And what that means that
Mhm.
those of us who are leaders, particularly in the church, and those who lead others, who are leaders of others in their distinct ministries and certain things like that, we have to understand cultural competencies. Now, cultural competencies doesn't mean just one race or one ethnicity against someone who differs or look different from the way that they look. Cultural competencies can also be within one distinct race or
Mhm.
Mm.
ethnicity.
Wow.
Okay,
Mhm.
and we have a responsibility to be competent to understand the people that we lead, where they come from, their backgrounds, and different things like that. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tag off of Pastor Felicia with regards to that? because there are some who may not understand or have that capacity, as far as they see, because they feel they have to be trained. But even if you don't receive the necessary training, as pastors stated, there is something, a four-letter word that's been given to us by Jesus that says love.
Yes.
And in love is that capacity to be able to deal with the deficiencies of understanding someone else's culture, right? Being able to understand the differences that we have, because love, like Lim said, there are certain things that in a relationship, you might say out of that friendship or that relationship, but you don't know that it might be culturally offensive.
That's
But
right.
if you offend me in that way, and I make you aware of that, because again, you didn't know it, because in your
That's right.
culture, it may not be offensive, but in mine,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the capacity to love and to forgive helps us
Yes.
to broker the differences with our culture, with our inequities, whatever it is. It helps us, and so even if I don't go to the school for learning, but I pick up the word that says, "By this shall men know that you're my disciples." It doesn't make a difference whether you come from the ghettos of Galilee, or whether you come from some other distinct community that's totally unrelated. Love is that differentiate that
It's
works
that bridge.
out. Yes, ma'am. That is the thing that bridges us through those cultural barriers
Bridges.
and deficiencies.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Bridges,
I think
bridges and binds together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
yeah, I think our churches and our leadership in our churches often want to dismiss people's cultural differences because it takes more time out of their day to actually learn somebody's culture.
yes,
And
church guy.
so if somebody presents with a different culture, you can have a sideways look. You can kind of have this are you sure you're in the right church, type of mentality. And
Mm-hmm,
um I've been in situations. I grew up in America, so I've been in situations where I'm in an American church and there's nobody else that looks like me, talks like me, or have a different language. And you get that sense that you're different. And I applaud the brethren who try to make sure that I feel welcome. And I think we have got to do better to welcome those who specifically may not look or act or respond or worship like us. Just I like I said, I grew up Pentecostal, and my worship is expressive. I learned that God spoke to me at 15 years old in my ear concerning a method of worship that I espouse. And when I had the chance and the ability, I would throw myself around. That's me. I'd go in everywhere, and I would I remember being in a church when I was 17, 16 years old, and it was also because here in New York, you're a multicultural church. A brother would come and squeeze me at during altar call because I would just throw myself around. That was just my way of expressing myself. And so I grew up thinking,
Can you
anything
can,
less than that,
can you give us
anything
a
less than
demonstration
that.
of them?
What's that?
So can you give us a demonstration? I want to see what
Oh,
that
you
looks
don't
like.
want to because I'll break my ankle, I'll twist my leg, I'll dislocate my arm.
See,
I'm trying to.
the the
You just created a
the,
mental picture in my head.
the
I'm
I mean,
trying
it's
yeah,
crazy, bro. I mean,
mine as
listen,
well.
listen. I tell you, right? Because
to.
back in the late '80s and early '90s, right? That's when hip hop came
Because I
on.
could see the
Like,
deacons. I could see the deacons coming to assist you. I could
It's
see the
I'm
church
serious.
easy.
He
mothers
would
coming with
grab
some
a hold of
oil.
me. He would grab a hold of me, and I would throw myself like I'm in a mosh pit. Just because I just want to, like, every part of me has got to feel worship. You know what I mean? It's like So and and
And so,
this
do
was
you
me.
still do that? You still do that?
Like what I'm saying, Pastor, I can't do that because
Short answer.
I will dislocate my arm, twist my ankle. I will not be available for anybody for the next 2 weeks. I I try to worship a little bit a little bit
I'm
like that,
sorry,
but
brother.
Yeah, yeah.
20 years, 20 years later. Uh, but I grew up thinking anything less than that is subpar worship,
Mm-hmm.
which is a
Mm-hmm.
poor way of
Mm-hmm.
us viewing worship, expressive worship, or even non-expressive worship. It was a
Mm-hmm.
poor way. And as I grew up and learned a little bit more and kind of accepted more that my Pentecostal lineage and traditions of exuberant worship is not the only way to worship God. And it is not the premier or the height of worship. Serving people, loving people. That's Pastor Felicia. Honoring people is greater value to God than me sweating my shirt out, or disrobing myself like David, because that was my intent, right? I want my shoes to come off like David. Um, that the quiet, silent worship of the prophet that was in the temple for years and years, waiting for the Messiah to come.
Mm-hmm.
And he seeing Jesus for the very first time, um, and praising God for the day that he laid his eyes on Jesus. Is of greater value. Now, I could worship like that, but if my heart is not right, if my heart is judging people, what is that worship to God? So, I think the centrality of worship has got to be loving God, um, in expressed as a servant of God, loving people. And I think now, the greatest mode of worship is being able to stand in the shoes of others and not belittle their pain or sacrifice their hurt
Hmm.
because you yourself have never experienced such. For me
Wow.
to
Mm.
rally for my brothers who are feeling the oppression, I don't have to suffer the oppression, but for me to understand, or even not to understand, but um, to to raise their hand or lock arms with them, and say, you know what, I may not feel your pain, but I will weep with you. Cry with those that cry, mourn with them that mourn. I think God celebrates that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lem, I'd like to kind
Just
of
let
back up. Oh, go ahead, Bishop.
Angela. No, no,
Go ahead, Bishop.
I
No.
Sorry.
was looking at a few things, and one of them related to when we're talking about the diversity. I don't know if you can make this larger or wider. Let me just mute my music. But this was an interesting verse of scripture that spoke to something that I thought, kind of binds us together, right? Where it says, "For thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation."
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about the diversity, you talk about whether the cultural differences, linguistic differences, all of those things, but that's what he has done for us.
That's
And
right.
it was done in a way that was unilateral. That blood that was shed
Yes.
to redeem us. So
That's good.
what binds us together is the thing that is most important, not the things that separate us. Even in our cultural sensitivity, it is still that love of God that has to flow, and the blood of God, of Jesus rather, that binds us, brings us
Yeah.
together, make us one. If that makes
I
sense.
really
Yes,
like that.
Angela.
I really like that.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Lem,
I that's why my challenge always, I'm in the place now where I'm wondering, a lot of churches don't invite me to come. And first off, you say, are you good enough to share on their platform or their pulpit? And the other thing is that, am I so different that people don't invite me to come because there's a sense and expectation of what maybe an Asian pastor or an Asian minister
Sure.
would be. Um, and then I say to myself, I think the church, especially those that have predominances in their congregation, and when I say predominances, you guys know what I mean.
No, I
They're
don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't.
sorry. Okay, so the predominant culture, or the predominant people,
Got it.
you know,
Okay.
the
Okay.
predominant ethnicity of that place.
Okay.
Um, you know, when there is a predominance of a people, of a culture or ethnicity in a place, that pastors should be intentional in allowing people that don't look and talk and sound like them to come and share. Now, we're not talking about theological differences. I understand the sanctity of the platform and the pulpit,
Sure.
and you don't want to share anything that provides confusion to people. But just, I want people. For me, I want somebody like like for me. I'm like it. It begins to crawl up my sleeves if in my church the only people that I see look like me up on the platform. It starts bothering me. I get all like antsy about it. Why are there, like our lead minister right now is also Filipino, and it bothers me that he's the lead minister. That there's nobody else that would take his place. It bothers
Yeah.
me. Um, you know.
So
Pastor
let me
Anslem.
let me give you just a couple of thoughts that I guess I was thinking while you and then you just added a third one. So one, when we were talking about and Pastor Felicia, you were talking about the cultural sensitivities and Lem, you kind of brought this in where you're talking about cultural appropriations. But that cultural sensitivities, you know what a wonderful world it would be if that even went both ways. So, for instance, what could I use? Over here, when we take a thumb and we put a thumbs up, that
Mm.
means great job. I agree. I
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
love it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And in another culture, that's like a middle finger. I
Yeah.
don't know if
Correct.
that's true or not. I'm just making that
That's
up.
true.
Let's
No,
suppose that I
actually, that
think it
is
is
true.
true. Actually, yeah. So when I go over to a place where that's what that means, it's a middle finger in their culture. If I love those people, if I'm sensitive to them, I'm not going to say, well, I'm in America and from America,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean what you mean. So I'm going to do it, with, reckless abandon.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be sensitive to that on my end. But what if that
Mm-hmm.
thing also went both ways?
Mm-hmm.
That if I'm the culture where this means a middle finger, I can also say, well, he's not from here. And so that's not what he means by that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to be patient and loving and accept that that's just
Mm-hmm.
so. Let's put that in the racial context. Len, we were talking about before people who use the phrase "I'm colorblind,"
Mm-hmm.
and in a lot of the Black communities, that's become a very antagonistic phrase. When somebody says, "I'm colorblind, I don't see color." I'm like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
stop it. I'm standing right in front of
Mm-hmm.
you. You don't see me? I don't
Right.
Mm-hmm.
look like you. I'm different. My culture,
Mm-hmm.
and so sometimes that becomes antagonistic, and our response is don't do that. However, if both sides could take
Mm-hmm.
the time to step back and look at what they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
from the other person is saying that, okay, when I say I'm colorblind, I'm saying I don't see you. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing unique. There's nothing different about you. You don't matter. It kind of comes across like that. But
Mm-hmm.
from the other side, me being Black and hearing somebody white or from a different culture say they're colorblind, I can figure out to a large degree what they're trying to say. They're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily trying to be offensive or trying to be dismissive of that. And maybe they are. Maybe it's kind of a low key thing and they don't realize it. But their intention is not that. So
Mm-hmm.
for me to be
Mm-hmm.
so offended that now dialogue can no longer take place,
Right.
that's where we have the problem. I
Right.
get it. You need to say, okay, this is what I hear when you say this.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be able to have the dialogue. But if it shuts off because we just become so disengaged and so done with, this, then that's it. That's exactly what happens. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's no room for growth. There's no room for this brotherhood and this growth in the body. It's just done.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, Glenn, what was the last thing that you were just saying? Because I had something that you were.
Appropriation,
Oh
cultural
yeah, the
appropriation
appropriation.
versus
Okay, so
cultural
when you were
influence.
talking about your presentation and how people are going to say you preach like a black guy, a black preacher, et cetera, et cetera. Um, one of the things that when I was growing up in my denomination, as is many denominations, still very separate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when I was growing up, this is actually the language that we use, and I think we, for the most part, we still use. There's a black church and there's a white church. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we say. This is a black church or that's a white church. And so every now and then, um, as a black guy, you get invited to go and preach at a white church or at a predominantly white church,
Mm-hmm.
and that battle would go on in your head. Do I get up and put on my scholarly,
Mm-hmm.
voice, and do I talk, or do I preach the way I would at my home church?
Mm-hmm.
Do I get my growl on? Do I get, do I whoop? Do I,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff? And so initially it would look like the black pastors in the early years who got invited to preach at white churches were pastors who spoke the King's English, who, all their subjects and verbs agreed. And, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do the growl. You didn't do it. It was very erudite, very intellectual, and there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that. But
Mm-hmm.
it said something. It said that that's not what they will appreciate in that setting. Now,
Mm-hmm.
by the time, and that was when I was young, by the time I got to college, it was different. By the time I got to college and into seminary, it's like if a white congregation was inviting a black preacher to preach, especially if that's how they preach it, they know they did their research.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they wanted. They wanted
Mm-hmm.
it to be different. But that also provides another little dilemma. And that is, all right, so is this a spectacle? Am I a showpiece? Is this, is this just,
Yeah,
so for me, Lim, the answer to your question is simply, I think, how we deliver the gospel is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tool. It is not necessarily an identity,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
that's
right?
so good. That's
Mm-hmm.
so good.
So
Oh, that was good.
if I get in my mind that how I deliver the message to these people, that is not the message. That's the how. The message is the message. How
Yes.
is just the tool. So
Mm-hmm.
then that lands me at know my audience.
Mm-hmm.
Know your audience.
Yes.
Exegete your audience. All
If
right.
your growl is not going to work there, if it's going to be
The big
distracting from
idea.
away from the message, then don't growl.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
as I,
stop trying to make the how your identity.
Right.
yes.
Make the thing. And so
Like,
if you do that, what you have done is you have elevated your identity or elevated your culture over the message. And that should
So
be
Mm.
upside down.
the
Correct.
question would be is that I mean going right back, I got two things as you were talking, as you were sharing. I was thinking about tokenization. How do you feel? Let's say, for instance, now if a black church calls me and says to me, Pastor Lemuel, I would like you to come because there have been
We
no
need a
Asians
Filipino
around.
speaker.
Yeah, we need a Filipino speaker. Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a sense that you could say, are you tokenizing me? What is going on here? Are you using me as a tool?
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, I'm okay with that. I mean, I
Yeah.
champion the
Preach.
idea that,
Like, go.
yeah,
Preach.
for me, yeah, I bring me there as a token Filipino. I'll be your token Filipino because people have got to see that this gospel reaches different cultures and different
Yeah.
people. I'll be your
Yeah.
token guy, but
Yeah.
I mean, our culture has already put it that there's such a bad connotation to tokenization. And then the second point that you were saying is if I go in a room now and I begin to kind of feel the vibe in the room, and I begin to say, um, you know, I begin to preach in let's say in during the worship, it's a fairly quiet church, so I kind of come with a Baptist kind of delivery, not non-Baptist Costal delivery, just kind of like straightforward,
Baptist.
educational, erudite type of situation. And then when I go to a black church, I'm just throwing, and God, what I'm saying, and then the congregation is like, bro, you don't have to do that, man. We know what a
Yeah.
Filipino sounds like. You should really talk like yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm the challenge of even knowing the room. It be viewed as an actual affront to the congregation when they think, hey, you know what? I don't think you talk this unless obviously they see you
I
wherever you
I
may be.
I
Come on,
like to
Felicia.
ask. I would
Come on.
like to ask about the authenticity of the gospel.
Yes.
Mm.
The gospel is authentic. It
Mm-hmm.
stands alone. It's not
Mm-hmm.
trying to imitate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not trying to be something that it is not.
Mm-hmm.
The gospel itself realizes that it alone can stand in its own power and its own strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about diversity, when we think about that, we must realize that God created us all the way He wanted to, and that we're all diversely different. We are
Mm-hmm.
different. The way that we speak is different. Forget the outside. Even if we look
Mm-hmm.
at the inside, the way that we speak, the way that we carry ourselves, our mannerisms, it's just so much different about each and every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, how I deliver the gospel is going to be different from the way someone else delivers it, regardless if they're female or if they're male.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me say this. When I first received my call to ministry, and I'm black. Do y'all know I am black, right? I'm a black female.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm colorblind.
So,
No,
yeah. So I want to say that when I started, I was thinking that many people expect for me to get elevated and to do this thing. I mean I can't do it. I'm a teacher of the gospel. I believe in exegeting the word of God. When I shout, I basically just tip my feet off the floor. I barely
Come on.
move.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
God changed me when He changed my heart, because in the world I was a dancer. But ask me to dance now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I'm talking about dance off Michael Jackson, that kind of stuff on a boat ride, that kind of dance, not the
Mm-hmm.
other kind. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
clarify. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lim, what I'm saying to you is I had to find my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to seek God and help and ask God to help me know that how He made me to deliver His word was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if people want me to come and if they invite me to come, then they need to understand that I am going to exegete the word. I'm going to teach the word, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to hoop and holler. I'm not made that
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm. Tagging off
yeah,
Pastor
and I think.
Felicia,
Uh,
if
Go
I
ahead.
if I may, because it's right
Yes.
in the same flow. Like, I wrote this down because I want to make sure I didn't forget that point. And I think Diana Gladley and a few others through our community at different times have said this. What's the sister over at live streaming pros? I forget her name right now.
Gloria. Gloria.
Gloria.
Loria.
Gloria. And this is something that my father told me, father in the faith told me some years ago. He says, son, right now you might sound a little like me, but you're going to find your own voice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And so you start off emulating or mimicking those who have been the influences or the teachers in your life. But what is interesting is that when someone calls you, as you grow, you show up uniquely, authentically you.
You.
And that keeps the purity of the gospel message, because it can only come through and be effective through an authentic presentation of the
Yes.
vessel.
Yeah. And what I would
That's where
say
it has its
that,
most power. Yes.
Bishop, is that even driving that a little deeper is that I think at its most potent, the gospel doesn't reveal the authentic me. It reveals the authentic him.
Yes.
Yes.
It
It has
Nothing
to.
to do.
Mm,
That's right.
Yes.
so good.
And I'm saying that because you go to school with preachers, you're around preachers, and I know how we talk and how we, and there's often so much emphasis that's placed on, just be you, or just, be black preacher, or be this preacher, or be, whatever. It's like, I want him to be the thing that people walk away
so
talking
good.
about.
Yes,
If we're
God.
going to, if this thing is going to have the impact, and if it's going to be transformational, I know good and well I can't transform anybody.
So
Come on.
good.
I know good and well that my impact might last for a week, for a day, or for a few minutes, during the thing. But most people gonna forget, after. But if I can paint a picture of him that is authentic, then that's the thing that makes the difference in our preaching and in what we do. Yeah.
And I just state that not necessarily because I feel that, and not because I struggle with that. I state that because of the culture that we are in and the environment, society that we are in. We are really, in this conversation, we're talking high level, mature Christian ideology and believing. But let
It should be
get
on
down
all
to the
levels.
level of the people that are
On
coming
all
into our
levels.
churches. And there's a difficulty for them to kind of embrace people as they are sometimes. And they kind of pigeonhole people
That's
and
the
label
truth.
True.
people
Yeah.
That's true.
in different modes. And it becomes difficult for them to connect with a speaker or connect with somebody because they think, hey, that Filipino guy is culturally appropriating our black churches. Now,
But
mind you, that's never happened to me yet, but I'm just
It's not going to happen,
thinking
sir.
about that. And thank the Lord for that. But sometimes in our society right now, where we are fragmented and where our churches really are not celebrating enough and are not maybe intentionally celebrating the differences that are in our communities, that are differences in our pews, that are not lifting up the beauty of different cultures and letting everybody understand that even though we're diversified in culture here, the Jesus culture, the culture of Christ, is what we all submit to. You may view that, or you may wear it differently. You may even express it differently. But the cultural foundation of justice, love, mercy, hope, grace, forgiveness, and people at center should be the one that's promoted in our society now. So I say that because it's issues. The issue, I think, of our community, our country rather, is that in Brooklyn, there are 4 churches in one block, and that our churches cannot seem to connect together, even though we're culturally different. And we have to separate ourselves into our ethnic pools and our cultural circles in order for us to have effective church. And I detest that idea because I believe effective church
Okay.
should be one that God is lifted and differences are set aside to magnify the Lord. So for me, I think the issue, maybe not the problem, but the issue with us is that we like who we like, and those we don't like, we push away until we all look the same.
Yeah. Well, here's, I think, just a reality of life. I'm not saying that it's good or that it's bad. It's just real. And that is, we attract who we are,
Yes.
right? We attract
Wow.
who we are.
Yes.
I pastor in Fort Lauderdale, a church that is primarily Jamaican. Um, I tell people where I'm at, they'll say, "Oh, you're at New Hope. That's a West Indian church." And I'll say, "Nope, it's a Jamaican church. It's there's a very thick Jamaican. I mean, I got my wife is part half Jamaican. My father was from Trinidad, Grenada. I got a lot of West Indian, in my family. I am West Indian in that sense, and so." This where I'm at is just very Jamaican. The food that we at potluck, it's Jamaican. When I first got to this church on Saturday nights, they would have concerts, and the concerts were somebody will know what I'm talking about. The concerts were, and it was packed. A lot of young people in this church, more people in the evening for the concert, but the genre, the style, country gospel. That's very Jamaican. It's like country gospel sung with a twang, the whole thing. And I remember the first time sitting there, and that's not necessarily my background. I mean, I'm kind of grew up more anthems and black gospel type stuff. And I was shocked out of my mind when I'm sitting there, and I was two young people sitting in front of me. And somebody started singing one of these songs with a guitar and the whole, banjo type of a thing.
I was just thinking banjo.
And the young girl in her 20s, it's like a first, second year of college, says, "Oh, that's my jam." And I was like, "What? What in the world?" She was like, "Oh, that's my jam." And so in my mind, as I now begin to have, early on my conversation with my leaders there, I'm asking them, who do we want to reach? Right? Who do we want to reach? If we want to reach first, second generation immigrant populations, we're good. We don't got to change a thing, because this is who we're going to reach with this. This is our menu. This is our music. This is our worship. This is how we do, liturgy, all that stuff. Because we reach who we are. People who see how we sing, how we do service, how we eat. There's a comfort level. There's a familiarity with that. That's going to heighten that comfort level. So that's where they're going to be when faced with other choices that do not put them in that same comfort level. Is that wrong? Is that a bad thing? I'm not necessarily going to debate that part. That's not the point. The point is that we reach who we are. So what I said to them was this: who do you guys want to reach? And of course, you know what they're going to say. Well, we want to reach everybody, Pastor. We want to reach everybody. I'm like, well, if we want to reach everybody,
we have to change the menu.
Then maybe we're going to have to do some things, a little different in order to reach everybody. But now what happens? Now that begins to push them out of their comfort zone. And so these are some of the things that, so I can imagine, Lem, that at some point, some Filipino group or family member or whatever might look at Lem and say, "Oh, Lem is selling out."
Yes.
Because he's not preaching in Tagalog, because he's not, maintaining the, and if we're going to do what it is that you're trying to do, that's just part of the journey, that you have to bite that bullet and say, okay, fine. You can say that about me, whatever. I'm not even going to worry about, I'm preaching the gospel.
Hmm.
That's this
Yeah.
this one
Yeah.
thing I do. I'm going to make
Hmm.
sure that I get out here and I know the audience that I am trying to reach.
Hmm.
This is what
Hmm.
God has put on my plate. This is the burden that He has placed on my shoulders that He has asked
Hmm.
me to carry and me to
Hmm.
do. He didn't ask y'all, so I don't need you. Boom. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm headed.
So let me ask you guys a question. I
Hmm.
have a Hispanic brother in Christ, a pastor, younger guy than myself, and he would make jokes in Spanish while he's preaching. You know, this is a couple of years ago, and I want you guys to like correct me if I was wrong, because I told him, bro, you need to tone down with your Hispanic jokes, uh, because you're and your Hispanic words or your Spanish words that you use, because that may be alienating some of the congregation and begin to think only Spanish people are allowed here because the only jokes that are coming when the jokes are in, the Spanish comes out. Now I do allude to some Filipino things and all of that stuff. That's because of culture, and like I said, we always champion the culture. I try to know how to greet believers in different culture. Yashuninish Neikanu, that's Malayalam, or Pravocative, and all the Spanish and Russian, uh, Yasulolua, that's in Nigeria, all different types of people, so that I can be accepted and people can know that, hey, I may not talk your language, but I talk your language of Jesus and the gospel. So was I wrong to tell him, dude, you shouldn't be talking too much Spanish, because you're going to just appeal to the Spanish congregation, and your American congregation is going to feel like left out.
So I would. I guess I'll jump in. Everybody's pausing. um, so this is what I guess I would think with that. Um, well, before I go there directly, let me push a little bit further
let,
on.
let, let me let you think, because for me, I'm like, I look at my congregation, I look at the people that come up on the platform, and I want to make sure that those that are in the community are represented on the platform. um, that the people that are in the congregation can look at themselves on the platform and say, hey, that's me up there. I'm
Yeah,
accepted here, because there's an intention of the leadership to make sure I look like one of those people up in the front.
yeah. Here's another reality that is again. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, um, but in a lot of the black churches that I move in, one of the conversations that constantly comes up in it at some point is how much our church has been influenced from a Eurocentric point of view, right? So not just liturgy, but sometimes even theology and language, and so not only has some of the elements that are present um, been glorified, and this is how it's supposed to be done, that they will say there's no biblical basis for that. That's just a cultural thing. So that I was growing up, and Lim, you probably might, the holiness stuff. You don't clap in church. You say amen. Um, and at some point that was black folk would say, well, that's clapping is a cultural thing for us. The people who say don't clap, that's a Eurocentric thing, and they might be totally wrong. I'm just saying that's the discussion.
Hmm.
So at some point, they're going to say, well, not only have these things been kind of glorified and this is how it's done, the things that we don't do have been vilified. as being, this is wrong, and this is, because, and people say, but that's my culture, and so I think along the way, somebody's going to be sitting there in that auditorium and saying, these are things that we do in this attempt to be multicultural and to appeal to everybody. But some of these elements will never appeal to the people that we are trying to reach. And so if you're doing contemporary Christian CCM music, like, that's not Black gospel. That's that some people are going to say that's not going to appeal to or reach to the people in the inner city that have just been overlooked for so long. So I'm not going to try to mix it up. I'm not going to try to give a variety, because they're not saved yet. They don't know God yet. This is where they are. So I'm going to try to reach them where they are right now. And in order to do that, I have to use this methodology. And if I'm using this methodology, there's another group over here that's going to say, that ain't right. We can't do that. So they're not going to participate, or they're going to say that's of the devil, or that's this, that, and the other. And so that rift begins to grow. In many cases, because people are trying to homogenize some of these things. And so there is, and I'm not necessarily one of them, but I'm trying to do what we said earlier, trying to understand the other side. So I was that kid who was growing up. I didn't need to see a Black person succeed, being successful. I didn't need to see great Black role models on TV. I didn't need to see a Black president to think that I could do anything. That my parents just didn't raise me that way. I felt from a kid, and I went to church school. It was full of white kids. I was one of two Black kids in my entire class. I never felt like I was at the low end of the totem pole. I never felt like, I didn't feel like that. And so I could grow up. I could have grown up, and even now believe like, we don't need to have a Black superhero in order for kids to think that they can be strong and I don't need to see a Black doctor, but that's not true. Because there was another Black kid who did not grow up the way that I grew up, who had a different kind of experience where he was told because of the color of his skin, he could never achieve, that he would always be dumb, that he would be in jail. That kid does need to see somebody who looks like them that can be successful, because all the male figures in their life are selling drugs or in jail. That doesn't mean that every Black man is that way, but in their world, in their context, that's right. What they saw. And so for them, for me, I'm like, I do understand the need for a context in which I went to a HBCU, all Black. Well, it wasn't really all Black, but it was a historically Black college, and that, had a huge impact on my life. Not necessarily because it was Black, because I went to primarily white schools when I was, a kid. But going there, it was just a whole different dynamic that taught me some stuff and instilled some stuff in me that I never would have gotten in a different context, the way that I got it there. And so while I can appreciate both. You can probably tell by the way that I can float well between an all Black environment and a very mixed and open environment. I don't have hangups or problems, with that generally. But it's one of those things that I said at the very beginning, being able to see from one side and also trying to be able to see it from the other. So were you wrong in telling that Spanish preacher to stop using those things? For me, the answer would have to be, it depends. Who's he trying to reach? You have to answer that question. Is he trying to cast a broad and wide net? Then maybe that might not work. But if he was going after a Hispanic community and a Hispanic population where he's talking the language of the people, Jesus used parables that were aggregate, from an agrarian society. He
Hmm.
did that there because that's who they were and that's the stuff that they would understand and that's how they could
Hmm.
reach him. If he
Hmm.
was doing it in a different culture, in a different society, maybe he would have used a different type of parable to be able
Hmm.
to reach the people where they were. That's why
Hmm.
Paul, when Paul shows up in Athens, he starts preaching about this. He says,
I know.
yo, I'm gonna talk to them about Christmas. Y'all
Hmm.
think that Santa Claus and Rudolph and
Hmm.
Frosty the Snowman do all of this stuff, but let me tell you about this. He used the stuff that they were familiar with, that then to
Hmm.
then transition them to. And so,
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think it depends on your audience.
Hmm. Becoming
that's
all
a
things
very
to
good
all men
analogy.
that you might win some,
So,
right?
Yeah.
And then the corrective lens for Peter when it came time to go
Mm.
to Cornelius' house, where the Lord had to refocus him to understand that it's broader than the narrow. You've got to expand to be a fisher of men and cast a wider net because there's some other sheep that are not of this fold that I've also got to bring in too. As Anselm would say, the same thing that Paul would say, it depends on the reach as you look at it, because it's not a cultural thing. It is really the Christ thing. So will you communicate Christ's truth in the way that they can understand and relate to? There was one time when Jesus told his disciples, only go to the lost household of Israel
Mm-hmm.
initially. Then he flipped that script and then said, now go into all the world and teach. So again, it goes back to the same thing.
I see in this in a lot of things that you've said, Pastor Lemuel, and that those were great comments, Pastor Aslam and Bishop Oliver. I mean, just really, really pointed to the discussion that just happened, to see that unfold in that way. Um, what I would like to say, is with regard to your heart, Pastor Lemuel. I can
Mm-hmm.
see
Yeah.
in your heart uh, a very, very strong call to the nations.
Mm-hmm.
And I really truly believe that it is this thing in your heart that you have that desire in your heart for the nations, and God is calling you to the nations. And I believe that it is time for you to just really, really just dig in and go to the master and ask him how to get that done. Go more inward.
Yeah, it's
Just
at like it's to the
yeah.
point of the vision, right? 20 years ago or maybe more. Um, and I feel privileged. I feel privileged that I'm a Filipino guy here in a diverse cultural city, a cultured and ethnic city called New York City. And and you can't pigeonhole me. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? You can't put me in a box and you can't label me. Yeah, you could. I'm a Filipino. Uh, I pastor a church here. I'm Filipino, but the fact is, it's not a Filipino church. It's a church for all people, right? And I know there's a church like that already, but yeah, I just feel privileged that people can walk in and be shocked. I like that feeling. I like that feeling to come in
Shocked
and
by what? I'm confused. I'm not sure I
there's
understand.
an expectation of a cultural of a cultural community or culture based community or ethnic based community. Because I'm Filipino, I'm going to pastor a Filipino church, and I like it when people come in there and that's not what they see. They see all types of people, all types of nationalities, and all types of people are being celebrated. And so that's the shock that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
there's a good question from Jody
Jody?
over here, Pastor
Yeah.
Jody. If we are experiencing a change because of cultural influence, are those cultural elements that are changing us moving us closer to a biblical church or a further
Good.
away?
Yeah. That's, yep.
It should be moving us closer to a
Yep.
biblical church.
Yep. But since when has the culture moved the
The
church
church.
closer
Right.
to the Bible? You know,
Right.
it's
Exactly.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost
Yeah. That
never
just
that.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Nope.
Right.
It's
We
not even,
we
it's that the church is designed in theory
To move the
to
culture.
move the culture the other way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
That's so
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Because we
So
can't follow
beautiful.
the rudiments and the dictates of the world. That would be a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
to me, I want to see diversity because it is an affront to what the enemy is trying to do in our culture, which is to separate us.
Mm.
And to say that there's so many differences that we have, we should be divided, or there is a reason for our division, because we're all different,
So here's
and
another perspective, Lim, I got to throw at you. And again, I don't necessarily subscribe to it in a wholesale, but it is. So there's that concept that unity does not necessarily mean uniformity, right? And we've always
mm-hmm,
heard that.
mm,
mm-hmm,
So um, if Bishop Donald Oliver is preaching in his all male black church where he
mm-hmm,
is, and he's trying to reach
mm-hmm,
all men because
mm-hmm,
there's a need for men. Men are some of the least lower population in the church. So
That's
his
mm-hmm,
right.
ministry is for men. He's doing stuff
mm-hmm,
for men. But Pastor Felicia, that women have issues, and so she's
mm-hmm,
got a church, and they're preaching the same gospel, but
mm-hmm,
they're trying to reach. They are being intentional about reaching very specific audiences through their messaging, through their ministries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then Lim said, say you're doing the Tagalog thing. You're going
mm-hmm,
after that first, second generation Filipino immigrant because they are often overlooked or they fall through the cracks in the bigger things, and they have some issues that are unique to them that are not being addressed in the large. And so you say, I'm going to start a ministry specifically for them, but you're still preaching the same gospel that Donald is, that same gospel that Felicia is.
mm-hmm.
Does that mean that even though you, all three of you, have very specifically targeted audiences or people that you're, does that mean that you are disunified? Because there are no men that show up to Felicia's church or her Bible study, her congregation. There are no women nobody but black people, because maybe he's going specifically after black men and dealing with those.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that they are disunified because they are just being very specific in the audience that they are trying to reach? Now, they'll talk together, they'll pray together, they'll coordinate, what they're trying to do together. Does that necessarily mean that they are disunified simply because you don't see under one roof a more um, diverse gathering? I see him
I
saying that
think,
only if they were exclusive.
yeah, I think you can find unity, and obviously uh, um, in a commonality, right? Because people have all things in common, and you can find unity in that. Um, what would bother me is if Pastor Oliver, in his reach for black men, that if a person like myself come in, I am requested to find another place to fellowship. I personally, I would understand it, because I feel like, yes, there are cultures and there are groups of people that have different challenges, and there are communal challenges. I would accept it, but would I be missing my chance if I was not saved or did not know Jesus? Would I be missing my chance to minister to them because my intended audience is A, but you are part of B, and so I
Yeah,
can't I can't disciple you because you're not in my demographic.
yeah,
I think what the part of your question in our creative space and terminology, that kind of analogy that you use, it reminds me of niching down, right?
Mm-hmm.
mm,
Right. So let's say we're all in the same church. And what you just said, Pastor Anslem, it reminds me of the different ministries that we have in one church.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
it's not separate, it's not divisive. It's something like gospel music. All gospel music is not the same because we're all different. And the same music is not going to reach everybody, but we're going to be reached,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
Well,
think the conversation that we're having here is I don't know. I mean, I think it has to be or should be it should be uh, I may be using the wrong word, but required conversation for leadership. I think
oh,
to the point that you were
absolutely.
saying, Pastor Anslem, about who are we reaching, and to the point that Sister Felicia, Pastor Felicia mentioned earlier, that it's people. You
yeah,
know, are we reaching subsets of people? Are we reaching colors of people, cultures of people? Are we reaching people? I think for us to niche down and be like, look, we're going to serve a particular part of our community that doesn't represent all of our community. We're just going to talk to the men or to the women or to the black brothers or the young inner city kids who have different needs than those more affluent um, in the affluent neighborhoods. We're gonna go and minister to them. But I think overall, if we come together in unity, um, those differences, to me, I think those differences are actually what actually makes our church richer. To me, I think the wealth of the church is the ability that it has to unify all groups of people together. If we are intentional in doing so, that's the
Yeah.
wealth and the power and the strength of the church, I think.
Yeah. I was in Nicaragua preaching a series a few years back. When I came back, watching the news, there had been a lot of these shootings, more shootings of these unarmed black men, and there was this, this tension and this heaviness. And I got up that Sabbath in my church, and I told my congregation, again, a predominantly black Caribbean congregation. I asked them, I said, how many of you, and I want to see your hands, how many of you have somebody who is not of your culture that you can call a friend?
Mm.
Just raise your hand. And there were more hands than I expected that actually went up. And then I said, how many of you have within the last 2 weeks had a social interaction with somebody who is not of your culture, meaning black, whether they're black American, black Caribbean, whatever? Fewer hands went up, even though there was a lot of hands that said I have friends, but they had no social engagement. I said, when's the last time, and that was just flat out, when's the last time that you had somebody white over to your house to put their feet underneath your table and break bread?
Mm.
Virtually no hands. So even if I agreed with all of those arguments that I was articulating before about targeted, if we don't interact and we don't talk, we don't fellowship, we can't break bread outside of our circles, this burden and this vision that you're talking about, Lem, it will never, it won't work. Even if all we did was come in the same building and worship together, that's still not enough. How do I know that?
Mm-mm.
Because it doesn't work even in homogenous
That's
situations.
good.
We have
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
people in my churches that are generally homogenous that are not together because we don't do anything but come in the building, sit, watch, and go
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And so
wow,
fellowship and community, and I tell my folk all
throwing
the
me off.
time, the community that I sense and that I feel in this ECAM thing
Mm-hmm.
is often far and above what I see happening in church, and
Yes,
something that I think church could emulate,
Mm-hmm.
um,
yes,
to be
Mm-hmm.
able to share and interact and help each other in just
Mm-hmm.
daily stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I think that's where the real difference is
Yeah,
made, not just in being under the same roof together for
Correct.
a couple of hours for a worship
Right.
event,
but this
Hmm.
but
this is
community.
this is the reason why we need to have people. We kind of have to like make an intention to it because people don't have that. They
Yeah.
they don't generally come together. I like what you say. Put their feet under the table to break bread. I remember two incidences. One was just last year, and the other one was years back. We had a Ghanaian sister that was coming to the church, and she had told me that her friend, she had invited a friend to our church, and she said, "Well, my friend turned to me and said, 'Why do you go to that church? You should go to a Ghanaian church. Those are your people. You should really celebrate with your people.'" And the sister was going to our church, and so finally the friend came to our church, and after the service she said, "Oh, now I know why you go here."
Mm.
Then um the other incident was a um my neighbor across the street. She's white, her husband is black, so her sister-in-law came to one of our gatherings online. She was there several days, and then she said, "You know what? This probably how the first church feels like, because I see so many different people, but all I feel is one.
Wow.
All I feel that there's
That's
only
good.
one culture here, and I feel like there's one. This must be what the first church feels like." She mentioned, "I've been in black churches and in different churches," and she says that her kind of her her not understanding, but her experiences. So I have those examples. To the point that I was making when I first opened my current position now is that we need to bring people to our churches, because some people will never have other people in their home unless they first meet them in a place like church.
Sure.
Because in church, we're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to extend graces to each other. We're supposed to accept each other in our different nuances. And therefore, for me, when I see somebody that I have yet experienced their culture, my first thing is to invite them to my home so that I can learn from them and I can know them. It's not even to make them feel accepted. It's for me to be learned of their culture so that I can minister to them where they're at. So, um, and that obviously expresses to them that they are loved, that they are cared for, so forth and so on. But in reality, I just want to be able to take the gospel and bring it to where they live and not have to have them learn me first. And that's the problem that we see, is that a lot of us are making people learn us.
Mm.
Learn me, learn my ways, learn the way I do it, and then I could come in fellowship with you. Instead of saying, "You know what? I'm going to come down where they live and how they do their stuff and eat their food so that I can minister to them effectively." Because the gospel needs to be preached, and it needs to be preached to everybody. And it doesn't
Hmm.
have to be the way I share it, because the way I share it may not reach them. So it's I if somebody tells me, if they come on and be like, "Oh, I'm from India," which we don't normally have in the church, so I throw my Indian, the one that I shared with you guys, and try as I may. "Oh, what can I do? Oh, I haven't eaten Indian food. Let's go and eat it. What's your food?" And they're all
Hmm.
like, "What? Are you asking to come to my house?" "Oh, yeah, I'm asking to come to your house and for you to come to mine."
Hmm. Can I, for the sake, we've been kind of deep and heavy into this, and it's It's good. It's good. It's rich. But there's some other ways and some other, I'll say some other ways, other tools, other methods that we can use in engaging and breaking ice and kind of pulling together fellowship. And so, I wanted to share something with you. It's techie now. Okay. So we can move from the text, TEXT, to some TEC.
That's the one I was looking for.
Okay.
The transition to the game.
That's good.
So I was hopeful to share this with you. Some of you may have seen some of the games that I present and that I share for fellowship. All right, church guy, catch you later, brother. And so this is one of the games that I've come across. Of course, Wheel of Fortune is pretty interesting for those who like to play. And so I did something in preparing for tonight. Let's see if I can get this here going. I don't know who else is in the comments. But this is an actual Wheel of Fortune game. Okay. And it is based on PowerPoint. And so these are some of the tools that I share with ministries for engagement with their youth, with their church, with their community, especially online, so that you can kind of work. So in this toss-up round, and if you have been a viewer of Wheel of Fortune, I call this Wield Your Bible, because basically you can use Bible text or you can use, just regular information. Tonight or this morning now, depending on where you are, I've kind of populated this for ECAM specific, if that's all right. And so the first round is a toss-up round, and I'm going to hit play and I'm going to let a few of the letters come up. Okay. And if you can solve the puzzle, this puzzle is same name. Again, everything is related to ECAM. All right. Everything is related to ECAM. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Everything is related to ECAM. And so I'm going to hit play here, and then I'm going to allow this to cycle through with some of the letters. I'm going to pause it when I think there's enough letters for someone to kind of solve it. All right. So I'm going to give you a few more, and I'm going to pause it right about here. Can anyone solve same church guy? Come on, church guy. You are the man. Let's see. Let's see here. Let's he'll become player number one. And let's see, to solve this, we say, yes, that's correct. Glenn and Ken Aspelog. Yes, absolutely. Got your attention. All right, church guy. Aspelag. Okay. Got his attention. These are tools of engagement. You can still reach people and share the gospel in very interesting, very engaging ways. All right. So we come to our next round. The next round that I'm going to throw out. All right. The next round, I'm going to spin consonants all worth whatever the spin is. And you can't buy a vowel unless you have at least $250 in the bank. All right, so we're going to spin. I would give you a little bit of audio, but I don't want to be disruptive. So we'll just have to wing it at 600. Can somebody give me a letter? Drop it in the comments, or anyone that's in the room. Anybody want to pull out a letter? Okay. Anybody want to pull out a letter? This is an event. What are you doing? Say again.
M.
M as in Michael?
Yes.
Okay, there are two M's. M's. All right, we're going to spin. Now, this is something that I did inside of, you can do this in eCam and bring interview mode and bring every player in. And just like Anslem is doing, he's positioning you all in different places. Somebody give me another. Okay, I see R. Church guy said R. Let's see if there's an R. Unfortunately, there are no R's. We're going to spin again. Okay, we're going to spin again. Yes, absolutely. And you can lose a turn. You can also be bankrupt, $600. Let's have a letter. I see Gary said also R. Let's go. Listen here. No
The
church
church
guy.
guy
You're
is just a
close,
beast.
but no good. Yeah, he's a beast on it. I see Gary said he wants an L. All right, we're going to look for an L. There is one L. We're going to spin. And if someone wants to buy a vowel, you got some money in the bank. So if you want a vowel, just drop it in there. 300. Next. Come on, anybody. Let's see what we got.
C.
C. All right, let's see if there is a C, and there is one C in this.
Of course.
Anyone want to buy a vowel? Let me see if I can turn up some audio here, because there is audio that goes along with this as well. And so we're going to do that. Anyone want to buy a vowel, or are we going to spin?
I like
Somebody.
to buy
Somebody's
an
looking
E.
for T.
Okay.
The
You're gonna
church
buy a
guy,
what?
Jody's looking for T.
You're looking for a T, so I got to spin for another letter. Let me spin for another letter.
And Gary Jones says P.
Okay, let me get my audio the way that I want it here. Let's make sure I got my speaker up so that way you can hear full audio. Okay, Gary said a P, so let's see if there are any P's in this. Unfortunately, there are no P's, no P's in this. Did you hear that? All right, so we're going to spin.
I see an E in the chat.
Yes, Gary
Okay.
Jones says E.
300. So you want to buy a vowel. We'll buy a vowel. Nope, you have no money in the bank. You got to have money in the bank to be able to buy a vowel. So player one, there's no money in the bank. All right. Can I get a letter, please? I think church guy said a
Jody
T.
says T. T.
Let's see if there's a T. There are no T's, player two. Come on up. We're going to spin for player two. Okay. 300.
Gary. Oh no, he's asking for a vowel. So
He wants to buy a vowel.
no, there's an N. Now
Is an
church
N,
guy
okay?
says N.
There goes an N. There are two N's. Two
Ding, ding, ding.
N's. Okay. We're going to church guy. We're going to give you the benefit here. Would you like to buy a vowel? You've got 1,800 points. 1,800 points. Would you like to buy a vowel,
Yeah.
church guy?
That says
Would you like to
dollars.
buy a vowel? Okay.
Church guy.
Anybody? Okay,
He
he wants
says
to buy
E.
an
He's
E.
buying an
All right,
E.
so here we go. We're going to buy a vowel. We're going to
That's
select
Miss Jameen
E.
on
And there
Pastor
are
Anslem Paul.
4 E's in this puzzle. Event, what are you doing? Would you like to solve or spin?
Natha Jamin says S.
Okay, so
Hey,
let us take
Nita.
a spin.
I like to solve the puzzle.
Uh-oh.
Okay, all right, we're going to give you an opportunity right after this spin here. All right, so consonants are worth 550. Let's have let's go to Pastor Felicia. She says she wants to solve. Come on.
Ecamm LinkedIn week.
Let's see here. Let's see if this is correct. Yes, that is correct.
That's it.
Ding, 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 ding,
All
ding, ding,
right.
ding, ding,
Did you
ding.
hear the music in the background? Was it loud
Oh,
enough?
we did.
Yep, we heard it. We heard it.
Okay, awesome,
Nice.
awesome. All right, because I didn't pipe it into my eCam. All right, so we're going to go to the next round. I've only did 3 or 4 rounds, but let's move on. All of this is
Gentlemen.
related to eCam. This is all related to eCam. Yes,
Good
ma'am.
night, Felicia.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Have fun.
Pastor Felicia for
All
joining
right.
Thanks
us.
for
I
having
so
me.
appreciate your insights, Sister Felicia.
Awesome.
Pastor
Yes.
Felicia,
Great
if you wanna share anything else with me, I would love to hear from you.
Got you.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Have a good night.
We'll do this
Likewise,
again, Felicia.
likewise.
All right.
All right, we're
Definitely.
just about done with this here. Let's see if we can, we'll do a spin. Let's select a player. Player 1, we'll do a spin.
By the way, say hello to your incredible husband for us.
Yes, okay. Can we pick a letter? Anyone?
N.
Just for the fun of it.
N.
Did I hear N? N as in
N.
Nancy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There are no ends. Okay. We're going to spin.
Jody,
I see
who
church
seems
guy
to
says
be
R. All right. That'll be the next
playing
one.
R.
300. Okay. Let's see if there are any R's. There is one R. We're going to
Ooh.
spin. Okay. Who said it?
Gary and Jody. I don't know if they're the
900.
same person because they're all
Gary
R.
T.
Jones. Okay. I
Nita
see a
says
T.
T.
There are 4 T's.
Ooh.
4
4
T's.
T.
Yes.
Nita.
Who said
I
it?
hope I'm
Who said
saying
it?
her
And
name
this is a
correct.
bonus because not
Nita.
only will you solve the puzzle, but you're going to have to say who said it for an extra 1,000 points. All right, we're going to spin.
Goodness, what is that?
Everything is related to ECAM. Everything is related to ECAM. 350.
Got 2 folks
All
saying
right, I
S.
see
Church Jody's
S.
saying S.
There
Gary's saying
is
S.
1 S. Okay.
Gary
So we're going to
got it.
Jones and the
spin.
church guy
I can
are like
solve
in
the
sync.
puzzle. I can solve this puzzle.
Okay, now the 550. I am playing this off of my PC using NDI, bringing it into Ecamm. All right,
And
so
for
just
those
want to
that
let
do
you
not
know
know
how
what
this is
that
being
is,
done.
Yep.
Say again.
NDI is a network device interface that allows another computer or another device to wirelessly or even wired, but wirelessly connect to Ecamm and provide an extra input.
This is true, and we're using a wired network, bringing in the PC into the Mac and whatever applications across the device interface. And I see Church Guy says straight out of
Straight outta
Ecamm. Well,
Ecamm.
let's
This
see
guy
if
has
we
been
can solve
watching a
it.
lot of Patch Sajak.
I know, right?
Straight out of Ecamm. Look at there. Okay, now listen to this here.
Yo,
for
Jody,
the
do you live
bonus.
with Vanna?
Jody, for the bonus, who said it? Who said it? Straight out of Ecamm. Who said it? No,
Doc
not
Rock.
Doc Rock, unfortunately. Not Doc
That's got to
Rock.
be our very
Alicio?
own Keith Petzel.
Bam, no, not at all. Dean Reynolds. It was
Oh, Dean
done
Reynolds.
during the Ecamm design challenge that he closed out his design challenge talking about straight out of Ecamm. And that's how the t-shirt was birthed, straight out of Ecamm. All right, here we go
I
to the
hope he's
last
getting
and
royalties.
final.
Come on, Dean.
Okay,
Yes.
hold on, Bishop, right quick. So
Yes.
I would love for us to spend some time. I know there's a thing that now that's out, NDI 5, I think, or something like that.
Yes,
where
I
there's
have
like
it. I'm using it.
a bridge where,
Yes.
in theory, I would be able to bring in your PC
Yes.
as an on-camera feed here
Yes.
through NDI. We
Yes.
got to play with that and figure that out.
Okay. All right, we
Because
will.
That'd be
that
good.
has some very intriguing applications, particularly for
Yes.
churches or anybody trying to collaborate.
Explain that.
Yes.
Explain that right now, Pastor Anslem, if you can. What exactly are you trying to do? I mean, I've never heard of it, so here it is.
So say Lem, one day we want to I'm going to say something that we can already do that I know that's easy enough for us to do through Ecamm, but let's pretend it's just NDI. Say you do not have Ecamm
Right.
at your church,
Yes.
and we want to do a thing on one weekend where your congregation can see and hear my congregation and vice versa, so that we can kind of pull them up on, so we can say hello from Fort Lauderdale to Pastor Lem and his congregation, and then Pastor Lem and his congregation can wave back and say hello, Pastor Paul and your congregation from New York up here, and they can just kind of have a virtual meeting, and then we can sit and watch and do whatever. But you do,
Right.
because right now we can do that just through, because we both have Ecamm, and we can make that work. But for somebody who did not have Ecamm but still has this NDI bridge, then we could pull each other's cameras and feeds into our own platforms as a camera feed.
That's
as long as
correct.
you're in the network, right? Does it have to deal with
No,
networks and
No,
things of
no.
that
that's the
nature?
This
difference
is
with the bridge.
internet.
Yeah, it's the internet,
It's
So it's
using
just
the
interface
internet.
through a browser?
basically.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like right now you most of us are familiar with NDI, using NDI if NDI is on the same network. That's
Local
Yes.
at least
network, right?
that's been my
Hmm.
introduction
Local
to
network.
NDI. You have
Correct.
to be on the
Right.
Yes.
same network. But these are,
Hmm.
and they're free. It's free tools. You're not buying
That's
anything.
correct. That's right.
That you can I'm assuming both ends have to have some sort of a client or some sort of a
Correct.
install,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
Yes.
boom, I'm assuming you plug in some coordinates or some, I don't know, some
Hmm. An
longitude
IP
and latitude,
address.
something.
Yep.
and,
Yep. IP
and
address. Absolutely.
boom, there you go.
That
Yeah.
is incredible. So we could actually, let's say, have beyond just having
Blessings, church
you
guy.
All right,
through
Jody.
the eCam. Love you, bro. Through the eCam software or interface platform, I can actually bring your feed directly from your switcher if you have one at the church, and actually broadcast it on my screens, let's say,
Hmm.
and it is not it is not you don't I don't have to bring you in through eCam. I could
Right,
bring you in as an actual camera.
Hmm.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, it's much nicer with Ecamm because you can dress it up. But I'm
Hmm.
assuming you could still bring it. You could use Ecamm to do that. But again, it helps you to be able to work with somebody who just doesn't. They're a PC user and they don't
Hmm.
use Macs at their church. So maybe
That's
they're coming in
that's
on vMix or something else.
the PC, right? Before Christ, is that what it is? No, that's prior
Prior to Christ.
prior to PC, right? Permanently challenged. Is that what it is? Permanently challenged.
Who are they?
I got
This is
6 minutes left
interesting.
in me, gentlemen.
That's it. That's it. Who are they?
Who
Pick
are
a
they?
letter. Let's do this.
R.
R. Okay. There are two R's, and we're going to spin.
The
300.
latency issues. I hear you guys speaking, and then the letters and the spinning comes in like so much,
Oh,
so
wow.
much
Hmm.
later.
Next letter. Anybody?
N.
L.
N. Okay. There are 6 N's. Who
Six
are
N.
they? Who are they?
Who are they?
Who are they?
And
Okay. We're going to spin and come right back to you, Jamie.
Huh?
700. And she asked for an M as in Michael. There are 2 M's. Who are they? Mm-hmm. Who are they? This is all related to ECAM.
I haven't seen Neetha in years, but Neetha used to sing with me or I used to sing with her in a little group when I thought I could sing back in the day.
Wow.
Lem.
I want to hear you sing.
Yes, you got to
I know
sing
the
something.
Seventh-day Adventist
Oh,
Church
bankrupt.
are
Oh,
well
sorry.
known for their harmonic groups.
Yeah, they got a lot of talent coming out of a lot of places.
Oh no.
Yep,
Bankrupt.
bankrupt. Gonna
Bankrupt.
spin.
I remember
300.
when I was younger, a Filipino Adventist church came and they had a group sing at our church. It was fantastic.
It's like every Filipino Adventist I know sings or plays something. It's just
Let's
It's almost a
see.
rite of passage. It's almost like being a nurse.
Did you say P?
1J. Okay,
1J.
let's see who else is here. Okay, yeah, someone says ECAM is in there. Yeah, that's true
Anna
because it's all
Hill
about ECAM.
and Fulgence Henry in eCam.
Oh,
Say again.
Anna Hill,
Oh, Gannett
and
Hill and Fulgens Henry
Fulgens Henry.
in ECAM.
Let's buy a
No,
vowel and see if that helps. Let's buy
in
an O.
ECAM night. No.
In ECAM
News.
Okay.
Something news.
News.
Y'all so close. Oh my goodness, y'all got it. Y'all just so close. Someone said the T, so let's get that T in here. There is one T. Does that help? You want to buy another vowel?
Latency to catch up.
Oh, so it's not orange.
Let's buy a vowel. An E. We're going to buy an E.
Anna Hill and Fulgens Henry on ECAM Network News.
Oh,
Well, someone says on.
Wow.
That you said on, and it's not really on.
It's of ECAM Network.
Yeah, so
News.
let's solve this. There you go.
All right.
So that's it, brothers. That is it. That is it. And so wanted to kind of share that with you so that there's an opportunity for those who want to use tools for
What's the
fellowship
website,
and all of that.
Bishop?
Yes, the website for that is DS4C. That's 4C. Let me type it out here. I think I can do that real quick. www.ds4c.link/, is that games? Games. I think that's games.
DS4C.
Yeah, I think I have it on games. Games/games. I think that is correct.
DSC4C.
Yeah, DS, the number 4, C as in Charlie, .link/games. That should take you.
Time music now.
/games.
There you go.
All right. Blessings to you.
Oh, there it is.
It's good, good fellowship.
So tell us though, Pastor or Bishop, that's where you can go and create those games?
That's where you can go and download the PowerPoint, because these games run on PowerPoint, and there's at least another 15 or 20 that's there. And these are games that I teach people how to use for engagement, tools for engagement. You'll find Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud, Jeopardy, Bingo, Othello. I mean, many different games on the site there. And if that link doesn't work, just let me know and we can get you connected. But they work using PowerPoint.
Okay. All right.
They serve in PowerPoint.
Well, hey, gentlemen, it has been real. To our audience that have popped in and out tonight, thank you so much for hanging out with us. As you've probably picked up by now, you got 3 different preachers from 3 different denominations, 3 different churches, but we love the Lord. We love talking about the Lord and talking about technology. We love each other, all of that. Yes. And this is fun. It's always been, but this is the second time that we've done this. And I think we're just going to probably keep on doing this on Monday nights.
Sounds good.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning every Monday night.
No, we won't be able to do that.
It's supposed to be your rest day right now.
Yeah. That was yesterday.
But I want you gentlemen to know that I look forward to this. And we missed our buddy tonight, Keith Pelzer.
Yes, Keith.
Another pastor of a totally different denomination.
Yes.
And I know there are probably a lot of people in my community saying, it's Seventh-day Adventist pastor hanging out with other pastors. Hold up. Yes. Yes.
That's right.
Not just hanging out with other pastors. I'm hanging out with people. Somebody mentioned it earlier.
That's another conversation. The judgment. Oh my goodness.
Loved having Felicia with us tonight.
Yes. It was so good to see her.
Yeah, and Jody, if you watch this later, we want you to come and join us too, man.
Yes.
So looking forward to it. Good stuff. Nita says this was fun, awesome tool. Have a great evening.
Thank you for hanging out with us, Nita.
Yeah. Good
Bless your
stuff.
life.
Next time, Nathan,
Hey,
you're
you
gonna have
know
to come
what?
on and sing for us.
I have to say that if there's anybody here that have listened, either live or on replay, if you guys want to continue having conversations with us, I'm sure these men would love to continue the conversations. Converse in the chat. We'll pick it up. You know, if you wherever you're on, whichever feed you're in, you'll be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And hey, look, I want you guys to go to Donald Oliver Ministries, do that search on YouTube, subscribe to Bishop Oliver's YouTube channel. You'll get church stuff, you'll get tech stuff, you'll get some of this game stuff that you'll see.
Yeah.
And then you want to check out Lem Drops on YouTube as well. If you're
Well,
watching
that's the channel that I'm on. I also have a ministry channel, so you just my name is right there. Search it out. I'm sure it'll show up.
Yeah, you'll find all of those things there.
All the
But
100
there's
channels
some
I have.
people that may not be watching on your channel. They may be on my channel or
Yes,
Bishop's channel.
Yes. That's right. I had to correct myself.
Yeah. So make sure you go and check out those channels. Mine, you can check out my YouTube channel. Not that there's a whole lot on there, but I want you to to check it out as stuff goes up.
Yes.
It's weird. I have the weirdest one. It's Twitic. TIWI. How's it go? It stands for This Is What I Think I Know. That's the name of that channel. This is what I think I know.
Pastor Anslem,
you guys, go ahead.
Do you have any affiliate links? I mean, for eCamp, for myself, it's ecam.lemdrops.live.
Yes. So I have an affiliate link for my eCam as well. I don't remember what it is offhand. I will put it in the comments in the YouTube video. You'll see those links, and everybody should probably drop that link in our comments on Facebook and YouTube.
Good idea.
And then next time, I'll have them put up, so we'll be on screen for that. Anything else we want to share with folk before we?
I think to just let everybody know, there is these gentlemen, I believe, do provide this kind of consultation or service for those that may be needing it for their church or their ministry or for business and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to learn how to do this. I think all of us do. I have not done as much myself, but I'm starting to do that now. So, hey.
LC Mason, good morning.
She left me out of that comment, talking about both of y'all. Good morning.
No, it's the guy in the middle.
No, it's the guys on
the guy in the
side.
middle make
That's
us
okay.
look good.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
Always the flex. The beard is always the flex. That's all. That's
go.
all I'm saying. You know.
Lem, go ahead and pray us out of this thing, man. We've had a wonderful time tonight.
Father, in your name, Lord Jesus, we thank you, God, for this opportunity to be together. Thank you for these brothers, Lord, and for those that jumped online to converse and learn and celebrate and exchange ideas, thoughts, and concepts. I pray, oh Father, that you would just grant us your mercies, Lord God, to continue our day today and be our strength, our fortress, and our support. And anything that we have spoken today, Father, may it glorify you. And may it do what it was sent out to do. And that is to lead others to you, Lord Jesus. If any challenges that we have presented, any thoughts that provoke people to think and to consider, may they end up in concluding that you are center and that your gospel is supreme. And so we honor you and we thank you, God, for the ability to be here for this online platform. And thank you, God, for the heart of Pastor Anslem for bringing this together. Thank you for the insights, Bishop. And thank you for his story, for where he is right now, from where you brought him from. And I appreciate you and give you praise. And thank you for our sister Felicia for making us look better than we could ever do on our own. And we're going to give you praise and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. It's been real, gentlemen. All right, everybody.
Yes, sir.
You guys have a good night. We'll see you next Monday night.
Amen.
Good night, everybody. Much love to you from New York City.
Good night.